Hey friends, hope you're all doing well. We're doing okay too, just really tired since we've been working non-stop. We wanted to answer a question many of you ask: how does our publishing process work? Most of our audiobooks are first posted on Patreon as paid content. They stay behind a paywall for a few months. After that, they become free to access on Patreon forever. Then, a few weeks later, we upload them to other platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, X. Lately, our community hasn't been growing much, and we could really use your help. Please share our site in your Facebook groups, Discord servers, Reddit threads, Twitter, X, or with any friends who might be interested. Every little bit helps and we really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for being with us and supporting what we do. Swish. One by one, the Shadowkins rushed out directly from the darkness. Shadow Caponebridge was also among them. He directly activated his own castle fruit ability and threw out a large number of handcuffs. These were brought out from the Impel Down. And those Shadowkins handcuffed these unconscious prisoners, marines, and government personnel. Then, they were locked in the inner castle of Caponebridge's body. Luke-sama. In Shiryu's surprised eyes, Luke did not enter the experimental bases directly. Instead, he took him to the huge ice cave. Hiss, even though Shiryu claimed to be knowledgeable, he couldn't help taking a breath of cold air. Looking at those large and small, countless frozen corpses, chills went straight to his scalp. Punk Hazard was originally an experimental base specially established by the world government to artificially create the ancient giants. Looking at the thick ice wall and at those looming, hideous, and huge figures, Luke crossed his arms and said calmly, "It has been hundreds of years since then, and research has never stopped. For hundreds of years, countless prisoners from the Impel Down, even giants and ancient giants, have been sent here continuously to become experimental subjects. Except for monsters like Kaido, few experimental subjects can leave this experimental base alive. After they die, their bodies will be frozen here. Considering that the world government has been working tirelessly to conduct experiments on human gigantism, what he should pay attention to here is probably not just the bodies of the giants and ancient giants. If nothing unexpected happens, such as the bodies of the prisoners in the Impel Down and other experimental subjects, there should be many former strong men and some rare races. TSK, so that's the case." Shiryu's eyes lit up. This is a bargain for us. He knew very well how exaggerated the power of Luke's shadow fruit was. Here, not counting the corpses of ordinary humans, there are more than 100 corpses of ordinary giants. There are even many rare ancient giant corpses. This is a corpse that is well preserved and frozen here. There are also countless corpses that are only skeletons or have been destroyed. It is conceivable that over the long years, the world government has been crazy in order to obtain the combat power of giants and even ancient giants. Chapter 216, They Can Only Believe Unconditionally. Fleet Admiral Sengoku. The first half of the Grand Line. Marine Headquarters, Maniford. Branyo, sweating profusely, hurried over and reported loudly to Sengoku, "Obaskluk brought Ranger Yu to attack Punk Hazard and took away the entire island." "What?" Sengoku, who was discussing the buster call with Vice Admiral Tsuru, immediately stood up. He clenched his fists tightly and gritted his teeth. That bastard, is he not willing to be content at all? This time, is he targeting Punk Hazard? Even Vice Admiral Tsuru's expression changed. Although Vegapunk, the chief genius scientist, and a large number of scientists were kidnapped, it is still a crucial research base for the world government. It has extremely high value. Is it because of the expensive equipment in the experimental base? Sengoku frowned and said, "After all, those experimental facilities cost the world government a huge amount of money and resources, and they can't be built casually." Punk Hazard. Tsuru frowned, seemingly thinking about something. Their specific purpose is not yet clear. Branyu continued to report, but through the guidance of the Vive records buried in Punk Hazard, it is confirmed that the location of the Punk Hazard is going in the direction of the Dressrosa. Dressrosa? Sengoku looked gloomy and asked directly, "How is the fleet led by Sakazuki?" "Just an hour ago, the Buster Call fleet officially set off from the G1 branch to Dressrosa." Branyu responded, "And Admiral Aokiji has already started to board the warship from the G5 branch, preparing to reunite with Admiral Akainu and others." "Bad." At this time, Vice Admiral Tsuru suddenly had a drastic change of expression. "There," she said to Sengoku in a deep voice, "inside Punk Hazard, there are a large number of experimental bodies frozen. The world government has never given up the experiment of human gigantization over the years. There are many giants and even the corpses of the ancient giants. If Obaskluk is really the user of the shadow fruit, or if Gecko Moria is not dead but has cooperated with him, then with these corpses alone, the Netherworld pirates can create an astonishing number of giant zombies." "What?" Sengoku's expression changed drastically. And Adjutant Branyu was so shocked that he opened his mouth wide and couldn't speak. This is troublesome. Boom. Rumble. Next to Dressrosa, the sea was surging, and huge waves were surging. A huge island fell from the sky again. For a time, it caused a huge sensation, making those people a little panicked and uneasy because early this morning, the World Economy News had already reported that the world government announced that it would directly deprive the Dressrosa of its affiliated country status and would encircle and suppress the Netherworld pirates. Queen Violet had to do her best to appease her people and not let them worry. Your Majesty, what exactly do the Netherworld pirates want to do? In the palace, Kairos hesitantly asks Violet, who has barely recovered her spirit and started to handle government affairs. This series of actions has caused a lot of panic. Especially when the world government announced that it would deprive the kingdom of Dressrosa of its affiliated country status. The people in the country are a little uneasy and disgusted. Due to Sugar falling unconscious, he has recovered from his toy body and has been remembered by the general public. He still tends to invite King Riku back to be the king. However, considering that the Don Quixote family was destroyed by the Netherworld pirates and that Hobaskluk had no intention of controlling this country, under the persuasion of his sister-in-law, Queen Violet, he resumed his position as the captain of the king's army. At Violet's request, Law has used Devil Fruit's ability to select a suitable replacement from the cadres of the Don Quixote family and reconnect his severed limbs. Kairos had no choice but to accept the fact that Violet succeeded to the throne and became the new ruler of Dressrosa. After all, in terms of blood, as a princess of the Riku royal family, Violet. She's indeed the first heir to the throne of the kingdom. Brother-in-law, I should have told you that Don Quixote da Flamengo was once a celestial dragon. Looking at Kairos, her brother-in-law and the captain of the kingdom's army. Violet smiled bitterly and patiently explained, moreover, he is one of the 7 warlords of the sea. After usurping the throne of the kingdom of Dressrosa, he was recognized by the world government. In order to maintain its prestige, the world government still tried to cover up the truth and deprive the kingdom of Dressrosa of its status. And even publicly announced to the outside world that my father, King Riku, was a greedy and brutal tyrant who killed innocent people and did not recognize our Riku family to take back the throne of Dressrosa. I know this, the shameless face of the world government is too hateful. Kairos clenched his fists and said worriedly, it's just that without the status of an affiliated country, the people feel very panicked and uneasy. The fate of civilians in non-affiliated countries is very clear. Some people even blamed Violet for her unnecessary actions, insisting on joining forces with the Netherworld pirates to defeat the Don Quixote family, causing Dressrosa to lose its affiliated country status. They believe that the former princess of the Riku family did this just to regain the throne and did not care about them at all. This made Kairos angry and helpless at the same time. People's hearts are like this. When it comes to their own interests, they will not talk about justice. Brother-in-law, if it's just like this, I can completely give up the throne of Dressrosa. After all, the reason why the Riku family became the royal family of Dressrosa was that everyone recommended it. Looking directly at Kairos, Violet's face was full of seriousness. She sighed there and said faintly, but the world government will not give up. They don't care about Dressrosa at all. The lives of the people of Dressrosa, they only care about their own reputation. I even just received news that the Marine headquarters has made up its mind to launch a buster call against Dressrosa. What? Kairos's expression changed drastically. He never thought that the world government would actually launch a buster call against Dressrosa. As the army commander of the kingdom of Dressrosa, he is not an ignorant and hot-blooded young man. The thought of a military force that is terrifying enough to destroy a country is simply despairing. What can Dressrosa use to stop it? They not only target Luke Sama and his men, even if the Netherworld pirates leave now, the world government will not miss this opportunity to establish its power. Violet clenched her fists, her face was more solemn than ever, and she gritted her teeth and said in a deep voice, on the contrary, it is us in Dressrosa that must rely on the Netherworld pirates to survive. When she heard Robin say it, at first, she was shocked and a little at a loss. Angry, panic, uneasy, confused. Various emotions run through her. But after Robin's analysis, she comes to her senses and sees the evil and cruel faces of the world government. Now, Dressrosa has no way to retreat. They can only believe in Luke unconditionally and believe in the power of the Netherworld pirates. Damn it. Kairos, who was a little furious, clenched his fists tightly, and his muscles bulged out. With his eyes blazing with fire, he gritted his teeth and said, what do those bastards in the world government think of human life? Aren't those celestial dragons who are so high and mighty and don't regard anyone as a human being except themselves always like this? Violet said helplessly. She didn't expect that after finally defeating Doflamingo and taking back Dressrosa, she would encounter such a change. Violet. No, Queen, what should we do now? Kairos's expression changed. He took a deep breath and asked anxiously. I will announce the news later. If the citizens want to leave, let them leave. Violet said in a deep voice with a firm look in her eyes. Kairos hesitated, but... Don't worry, Miss Robin has already informed me. Violet interrupted Kairos and said directly, when the time comes, Luke-sama will directly lecture you use the power of the float fruit to move the entire Dressrosa to a safer location in the new world. Is that so? This is the only way. Chapter 217, Arise. Inside the huge ice cave, a large amount of solid ice has been melted and crushed. One after another, corpses of various sizes and shapes, all still well preserved, were revealed. Some rare and unique races even have labels attached to them. Their names and ethnicities were noted on them. It makes it clear at a glance. TSK, among these corpses, besides giants and ancient giants. Dr. Hogback's eyes lit up with excitement. There are actually fishmen, Longa-Urn tribe, Long-Leg tribe, Mink tribe, and other races, and even the rare Three-Eye tribe and the almost extinct Buccaneers and Lunarians tribes, they are even here. Not counting giants and ancient giants. These corpses alone, added together, number no less than 1,000 and can be used to create a lot of powerful zombies. Many of them were wearing prison uniforms and were obviously prisoners from the Impel Down, being brought here to serve as a concave experimental body. Their strength during their lifetime should not be too bad. Hiss. These bodies. It's chilling. The world government is so cruel. Almost all the species in this ocean were captured and used as experimental subjects. Law, Nami, Robin, Kid, Wiper, Perona, and others all looked at the corpses in disbelief and couldn't help but gasp. For hundreds of years, the world government has been conducting experiments in human gigantism at great lengths. It's really chilling. This Lunarian was probably the strongest among these experimental subjects when he was alive. Sensing the characteristics of these corpses one by one, Luke came to a tall man who was 6.6 meters tall, had black wings on his back, and had gray hair and brown skin. This Lunarian experimental subject has an ordinary appearance but has an extremely ferocious expression. It seemed as if he had endured great pain in his lifetime, revealing endless despair and resentment, and was full of unwillingness. It is so imposing and awe-inspiring. It's definitely a powerful monster. The world government might have paid a heavy price just to capture him. Luke then looked at the tall corpses from several Buccaneers tribe. Each one is between 6 and 8 meters tall and has incredibly muscular bodies, like little giants, giving people great pressure. After a thorough inspection, he quickly picked out the one with the strongest physique. Finally, under the surprised gazes of Robin and others, he said, and this experimental subject from the Buccaneers tribe. His physique is even more powerful than that of the hybrid between the Mink and Giant tribe, the giant werewolf, off. From the few Three-Eye tribe experimental subjects, he selected the corpse of the most powerful. Because the user of the shadow fruit's ability can only split into 9 shadows at most. At present, Luke has created 6 zombie kings, namely Ors, Swordsman Roma, Vinsmoke Judge, Golden Lion, Gecko Moria, and Giant Werewolf Off. From the Giant Werewolf Off, it was fully verified that zombie kings can inherit the racial abilities of the corpse before death. For the remaining 3 chances, he planned to give to the 3 extremely rare tribes, the Three-Eye tribe, the Buccaneers tribe, and the Lunarians tribe. A zombie that possesses special talents and abilities can give the Marines a big surprise. A dual-blade swordsman from the Three-Eyed clan? After cutting off the shadow of the Three-Eyed prisoner and absorbing it, he received some of the other party's memory information before his death, making Luke no longer contain his smile. This is actually a swordsman who wields 2 swords. Although his physique was not as exaggerated as that of the Buccaneers and Lunarian tribes, he was also a famous and powerful person during his lifetime. A great swordsman who fully meets the requirements for creating a zombie king. Luke is still looking forward to the special abilities of the Three-Eye tribe. It just so happened that he brought back the 2 cursed swords from Wano country so he could give Inma and Nidai Kaitetsu for him to use. As for the other sword, the Aim no Haba Hidden Mist Village, after being modified by Wapol, can be given to the zombie king from the Lunarian tribe for use. He was also a swordsman when he was alive. Even if he has the repair fruit, Dr. Hogback was still exhausted after such a huge restoration project. However, he was obviously enjoying it and was full of excitement. Luke-sama, these corpses are very well preserved. After a simple repair, they can be turned into zombies directly. Especially the 3 corpses you selected, Luke-sama, they have been perfectly restored to look lifelike. There is no longer the hideous expression that makes people feel creepy as if they were enduring great pain in their lifetime. It's just as if they are just in deep sleep. That's great. Luke patted his shoulder and smiled, "Thank you for your hard work. Is there going to be a new zombie king?" The Three-Eye, Buccaneers, and Lunarian tribe. They are all rare and special races. It's really exciting. In a dark cave, Law, Kid, Robin, and others all followed with burning eyes. Click. Luke looked calm, and then he came to the front of the three corpses from a special race. Relying on the ability of the Shadow Fruit, he easily cut off their shadows. Shadows split. His eyes suddenly became stern, and a terrifying red light flashed in them. The shadow under his feet was shaking violently. Swish. 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 Three strange human-shaped shadows split out from there at a speed visible to the naked eye. Entangled by the flying shadow vines, Luke fed them the shadows of the three corpses one by one. Finally, the contract was signed directly. Arise. Luke did not hesitate and activated the power of the Shadow Fruit. The three shadows were pressed onto the bodies of three powerful men and slowly disappeared. Plop. In the blink of an eye, the sound of a strong heartbeat continued to echo. The three cold corpses gradually regained their life and opened their eyes at the same time. Chapter 218, Three Zombie King Master. In a dark ice cave, three figures of different sizes knelt on one knee. Compared to ordinary people, they are taller than each other. The three-eyed zombie king, Locke, is 3.8 meters tall. The Lunarian zombie king, Lucifer, is 6.6 meters tall. The Buccaneer zombie king, Tyne, is 8.2 meters tall. Surprisingly, a ball of flame suddenly appeared behind the head of the Lunarian zombie king Lucifer. "Just call me Luke-sama." Luke folded his arms and smiled. Each of these three zombie kings is quite powerful. And they all have special racial abilities, which are no worse than the giant werewolf wolf. However, splitting into three shadows at once is obviously a big burden for him. Suppose he is not already the most perfect lineage factor warrior, which makes his recovery ability in all aspects far beyond that of ordinary people. In that case, he is afraid that he has fallen into weakness. "Yes, Luke-sama." At this moment, in the corner, a black shadow emerged. "Luke-sama, there is a blue dragon that appeared on the Kazekage island in the first half of the New World. It should be Kaido, the beast." A shadowkin knelt on one knee there and briefly reported the information he had found. He caught a sea king for dinner and roasted it with flames. He was eating it up at this time. But there was no trace of King Kaido, the beast? For a moment, everyone present was a little shocked. They didn't expect the other party to come so quickly, and they couldn't help but look at Luke subconsciously. Kazekage Island is not far from Dressrosa. Robin on the side frowned and said, if he doesn't plan to rest for too long, judging from the speed at which Kaido rushed to the first half of the New World from Wano country, he will be able to reach Dressrosa in 2 hours at the latest. As the Shadowkin army grows, the intelligence power of the Netherworld pirates is getting stronger. The sea area around Dressrosa, the islands of all sizes, has already been explored. Oh? Luke raised his eyebrows. His eyes showed a strong fighting spirit, and he smiled. Originally, I was going to have a good fight with him in Dressrosa, but the Marines' buster call disrupted the plan. Then, Luke-sama, what should we do next? Shiryu bit his cigar and said, that monster, Kaido, is not so easy to talk to, right? Forget it, I won't let him come to Dressrosa to make trouble. I'll go to Kazekage Island to find him directly. Luke was not too worried. He showed a playful smile, smiling and hoping that this guy would retreat. Because he had to deal with the Marines' buster call next, he couldn't waste too much time and energy on Kaido. It was just right, and he could fully verify the combat power of these zombie kings. If Kaido of the Beasts didn't know what was good for him, don't blame him for winning unfairly. Kazekage Island is a small deserted island. The land is bare as far as the eye can see. In addition, there are no mineral resources here, and it is completely worthless to develop. Therefore, the surrounding countries and those pirates have never taken this place seriously. Gurgil. A tall figure with horns on his head sat there while holding a wine gourd and kept drinking wine. Next to him, a 100-meter-long white skeleton was placed there. On his other hand, he was holding a den mushi that appeared extremely small compared to his exaggerated body. King, you should have returned to Wano country, right? He had a fierce expression and asked directly, what's the situation? Originally, King, the second in command of the Beast Pirates, was going to follow him to Dressrosa to meet the Netherworld Pirates. As a result, they heard about the incident in Wano country halfway through, so King had to turn back and take charge of the situation. And he continued to head towards Dressrosa to give that arrogant kid a lesson. Not only did he go to Wano country to make a scene, but he also kidnapped his daughter. He repeatedly provoked himself and was simply seeking his own death. Kaido, the situation is not optimistic, it's a bit troublesome. At the other end of the den mushi, King, who had just returned to Wano country, said in a deep voice, Kurizumi Urachi was assassinated suddenly, and those samurai were ready to move, and some people instigated them that it was us, beasts pirates who killed Kurizumi Urachi, attempted to occupy Wano country, and conspired to launch a rebellion. Then suppress them all and kill all those who dare to resist. Kaido squinted his eyes and said nonchalantly, I wanted to keep Urachi, but since he is dead, there is nothing to say. Although it is a little earlier than planned, it is okay for the beast pirates to take over Wano country now. From the beginning, Kurizumi Urachi was the spokesperson for the beasts pirates in Wano country. In the beginning, Kaido considered that the beast pirates had limited manpower and could not directly rule the extremely xenophobic Wano country, which had been closed to the outside world for a long time. Otherwise, it would take too much time and energy to deal with the occasional uprisings and rebellions of the samurai in Wano country. Therefore, Kurizumi Urachi was deliberately allowed to continue to serve as the shogun of Wano country, and the beasts pirates were only partners, supporting the other party behind the scenes. On weekdays, suppressing rebellions was left to Kurizumi Urachi himself. Unless the commotion was too big and this guy couldn't handle it, only then would beasts pirates take action to lend a hand. For a long time, in order not to cause a backlash from the whole country, the beasts pirates have not directly intervened in the management of Wano country and still retained considerable power for Kurizumi Urachi. But that was only a stopgap measure. When the beasts pirates accumulated enough manpower, they would sooner or later take over Wano country completely. It's just that Yamato was kidnapped by Obaskluk, and there is no suitable candidate for the shogun of Wano country. King said helplessly. As the confidant of Kaido, King knew that Kaido had long been preparing to let Yamato replace the puppet Kurizumi Urachi and become the new shogun of Wano country. But Yamato was taken away by Obaskluk at this time. Don't worry, I will bring Yamato back soon, Kaido said lightly. He didn't think that Obaskluk could stop him. King also responded with some murderous intent, I will suppress the unrest as soon as possible and clean up those guys who are in the way. Then I'll leave it to you. Kaido grabbed the mace beside him and stood there. Then he said murderously, I'm almost at Dressrosa, I will get rid of that arrogant kid first. Chapter 219, Kaido vs. Luke. In the evening, the waves were rising and falling on the sea. Without waiting for Kaido to transform into a dragon and rush towards Dressrosa, a calm voice suddenly echoed on Kazakh Island. You don't have to go to Dressrosa on purpose. In Kaido's eyes, Luke's figure gradually emerged from the shadow. I'm here. Obaskluk? Kaido carried a mace, stared at Luke fiercely, and couldn't help grinning. Oh! You actually dare to appear in front of me? Let's not talk about anything else. Just that amazing conqueror haki that is almost overflowing makes the figure in front of him worthy of his attention. No wonder he defeated even the Marines' hero, Garp. It can't be helped. I was originally planning to wait for you in Dressrosa, but those guys in the Marines are ready to launch a buster call against me. Luke shrugged and said, I have to change my original plan and can only come to you in person. He calmly looked at Kaido in front of him. It is indeed worthy of being a human-shaped monster. Just standing there makes people feel great pressure. If it were a weaker guy, they would probably lose the will to fight directly. It's a bit too early for you and me to fight now. What do you think? Luke looked at Kaido and chuckled. Oh, the buster call? Kaido raised his eyebrows and laughed. Those guys in the Marines are really fast. The buster call is the highest military action force from the Marine headquarters. Generally speaking, 10 warships are dispatched, with 5 vice admirals from the Marine headquarters and tens of thousands of elite Marine forces. But it is obvious that if it is just such a lineup, it is impossible for a strong man like Obaskluk to be defeated. The leader is at least an admiral from the Marine headquarters. Maybe there are admiral candidates like Momouzagi or Tokakake among the vice admirals from the Marine headquarters. Just like how the Marines caught the demon heir, Douglas Bullet, who was rampaging everywhere on the sea. The two who came out at that time were Sengoku and Garp. But, so what? He looked down at Luke fiercely and said, I am not your ally, and I will not support you, the Netherworld pirates. Let's not talk about the fact that you killed my partner, Doflamingo. Just breaking into my territory and killing Kurizumi Urachi, running to Onigashima to make trouble, and kidnapping my daughter, Yamato. Do you think I should settle this account with you? He thought Luke was under pressure because the Marines were going to launch a buster call against the Netherworld pirates and tried to join forces with the Beast pirates, so he came to negotiate with him. No, don't get me wrong. Luke smiled and said lightly, I'm not going to trick you into helping me fight the Marines, and I don't need it. I just want you, the Governor General, to return to Onigashima from here and stop getting in the way. Oh. If I go back just because you wanted to, won't I lose my reputation? Kaido laughed, and then, all of a sudden, his momentum suddenly skyrocketed. Swish. Like a gust of lightning, He rushed out at an astonishing speed. The mace in his hand was wrapped with Conqueror Haki, intertwined with black and red lightning as he fiercely blasted it to Luke in front of him, Thunder Begwa. However, Luke just clasped his hands with an unchanged expression. His right foot was wrapped with Conqueror and Armament Haki as he stepped hard on the mace that was coming violently. Bang! Crackle! Snap! Splash! The sea was boiling and surging. The fierce and unparalleled shockwaves rippled directly. The amazing Conqueror Haki kept colliding there. Black and red lightning, like dragons and snakes dancing, kept interweaving there and spreading to all directions. It was indescribably shocking. Whoosh! Two figures, one big and one small, with terrifying momentum, were deadlocked there. Luke's windbreaker fluttered, and his eyes became extremely sharp as he stared directly at Kaido in front of him. Then there is no room for negotiation. Oh, it's just a small fry. Kaido looked at the arrogant figure in front of him, and then he grinned directly. But you want to negotiate with me? You are not qualified. Ho! Before his words fell, the huge mace was raised again. Then, it directly crushed the atmosphere and struck hard. Is that so? Luke's eyes were blazing, and his eyes were full of fighting spirit. It's just right. I also want to see if you, the strongest creature on land, sea, and air, are really worthy of the name. He showed no weakness. He wrapped his fist with an extremely powerful Conqueror and Armament Haki. Bang! There was a loud noise, which was extremely deafening. The huge mace collided with a fist in the air. There was still a big distance between the two, and there was no direct contact at all. Thunder Bellow Begwa. Kaido obviously had no intention of holding back. He launched a fierce and unparalleled attack. Ho! In an instant, dense and spiked club shadows appeared and drowned Luke's whole body. Machine Gun, King Cobra. Luke's eyes were stern, he showed no weakness, and his fists suddenly expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye, and his veins bulged as he launched a crazy counterattack. Bang! 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 Amidst the bolt of lightning, two figures, one big and one small, moved swiftly and fought dozens or hundreds of times. It was dazzling and impossible to see clearly. Crackle! The huge waves were surging, and the air was rolling. For a moment, the whole island seemed to be shaking. The terrifying collision of the Conqueror Haki made the sea surge and churn endlessly. Boom! In the dark sky, the surging clouds were split apart. Two amazing air currents kept colliding and squeezing in there, neither giving in to the other. Chapter 220, Let's Leave It for the Future. Bang! Bang! Boom! Boom! On the ruined island, the terrifying battle is still going on. The sea is surging, and the waves are rolling. Whoa rah 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 rah! Kaido is violent, like a demon god, giving people an infinite sense of oppression while laughing there. Then he rushed at an astonishing speed and swung the huge mace again. Bang! The mace, which is wrapped in the Conqueror Haki, intertwined with black and red lightning, is extremely ferocious. It directly crushed the atmosphere with the force of thunder as it mercilessly bombarded Luke below. Luke's face remained unchanged. His eyes were blazing, and his fighting spirit was high. His figure was extremely swift, and his momentum was strong. He went straight out without any hesitation and kicked the mace hard. Boom! Black and red lightning intertwined as the two collided in the air. The ground cracked and collapsed. Good. Kaido grinned there and looked at Luke, who was so young but already so strong. He was not impatient or angry but full of excitement. Oh Bask Luke, I acknowledge you. Let's fight more. Sorry. Luke retreated violently. He restrained his strong fighting spirit and gradually suppressed the boiling blood in his body. Then he looked directly at Kaido and said with a smile, I can't waste too much time and energy here, let's stop here today. It's too early to decide the outcome of this battle between you and me, let's leave it for the future. Before Luke finished speaking, there was a loud whistle in the air. The ferocious mace was swung more fiercely, but Luke easily dodged it. Boom! The ground was smashed and collapsed like a spider web. That won't work. I haven't had enough fun yet. Kaido looked fierce and stared intently at Luke in front of him with a murderous aura. Then do you want me to attack Dressrosa and eliminate all the members of the Netherworld Pirates? I've given you the chance. Luke was not surprised. He shrugged and said with a smile, since you are so ignorant, I can only use a simple and rough way to end this battle. Oh, a simple and rough way? Kaido carried the mace and laughed in anger. His whole body was expanding and changing at a speed visible to the naked eye. So you mean you can easily defeat me? Roar. In the blink of an eye, a majestic blue dragon rose into the air, surrounded by flames. Kaido, who transformed into a blue dragon, has a terrifying aura that gives people an incomparable sense of oppression. Looking down at Luke from a high position, he was full of ferocity and arrogance. Boy, unless you die or I am defeated by you, don't think of ending this battle easily. Let me see your true strength. He knew very well that the other party was a devil fruit user. Just now, stretching and retracting his fist was obviously just a trial run, and he had not yet shown his true ability. TSK, fish fruit, model, Azure Dragon? Luke raised his head slightly, looked at the ferocious blue dragon in the sky, and couldn't help but smile. Under the eyes of Kaido, who was in doubt, he stomped his feet. Swish. A bloated black shadow figure emerged from the ground. Swish. 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 Then, one after another, figures of different sizes emerged from his body and stood beside Luke. Except for Vince Smoke Judge, who was far away in Germa 66 and was mainly responsible for scientific research, and Ors, who was too big and was not brought here, the other 7 zombie kings were all brought out by Luke. Kaido's pupil shrank sharply, and he was shocked and lost in words. Golden Lion? Moria? He recognized Golden Lion and Moria and was a little surprised. In particular, he never thought that Golden Lion, who had been on par with Roger and Whitebeard and disappeared for a long time, would actually join forces with Obask Luke. This is not like the style of that man. Is the guy with black wings and gray hair from a Lunarian tribe like King? In addition to the Mink tribe, which is as big as a little giant, is there actually a rare 3-eye tribe? He thought that there was only the mixed blood from Big Mom pirates on this sea. Oh, it's really surprising. Kaido grinned and just said to Golden Lion, a guy like you would actually join forces with a little kid. No, didn't you say that Moria was killed by you? But just as his words had fallen, he quickly reacted, and his eyes suddenly widened, and he looked at Luke in disbelief. Did you get the shadow fruit of that guy? These guys are. He had fought with Gecko Moria before. He knew something about the ability of the shadow fruit, and he guessed something at first glance. Because although these figures were lifelike, but they did lack the vitality of living people. For a moment, he couldn't believe it. Have you guessed it? I am indeed the shadow fruit user. Luke did not deny it and said with a smile, whether it is Golden Lion or Moria, I have killed them. They are all shadows that I split from my shadow, the strongest zombies I created, each of which is equivalent to my clone. You can taste it, but don't blame me for winning unfairly. Oh, zombies. I didn't expect that even a guy like Golden Lion would be killed by you. Kaido, who transformed into a blue dragon, laughed there, but I have seen the zombies created by Moria, just like trash. You still want to defeat me with these guys? After speaking, he opened his bloody mouth, and the blazing flames gathered there. Swish. The atmosphere was distorted, and the terrifying flames blasted out with lightning speed. It slammed Luke and the 7 zombie kings below. Blast breath. Boom. Chapter 221, 1 vs 9 Swish. A piercing sound whistled through the air. The terrifying blast breath twisted the air as it flew towards Luke. Slicing wave. Just then, Golden Lion made a move. In his right hand, he tightly grasped the hidden Sound Village, which was wrapped in armament hockey as he swung the sword without hesitation. Kai. A huge and blazing flying slash broke through the air and flew straight towards the crushing ball of fire. Boom. There was no accident, the incoming ball of fire was ruthlessly cut in half. Crackle. The blazing and dazzling flames spread out in the sky, and then it turned into a rain of fire all over the sky as it fell, illuminating the dark earth. What? In the sky, Kaido, who transformed into a blue dragon, could not help but be shocked. Is this Golden Lion swordsmanship? He never thought of it, the zombie actually mastered Golden Lion swordsmanship. It was completely different from the zombies created by Moria. It was completely different from the level, and it could actually block his attack. Are you surprised? Luke said with a playful smile, don't compare me with Moria. Oh, it seems I look down on you. Kaido was not panicked at all and laughed there, but I don't believe that their strength can really be comparable to when they are alive. Demolition gust. Before he finished speaking, his huge body suddenly moved. Woo-yo, then, a strong hurricane suddenly appeared there. Swish. 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 The next moment, there was a continuous piercing sound in the air. One after another, the sharp wind blades fell one after another, full of murderous aura. Slicing wave. Shiki's face remained unchanged. Hidden Sound Village and Koga Arashi were swung out like lightning. One after another, powerful and blazing flying slashes fiercely bombarded and pressed forward. They kept colliding with the incoming wind blades. Boom. At this time, an aura that made people tremble with fear spread. Swish. One after another, the figures that stood there were like a sword out of its sheath with its edge exposed. They all swung their weapons at the same time, their momentum kept rising, and they kept accumulating strength. Even beside Luke himself, a black shadow quietly appeared, which was his shadow clone. Then, both of them put their hands together and raised them high while entangled with powerful armament hockey, making strands of black and red lightning intertwined. Kaido, I think you should be familiar with the next move, right? Luke was imposing, his eyes were stern and full of playfulness. This is not a one-on-one battle, but 1 versus 9. Kaido's eyes narrowed. Looking down from a high place, he looked down at the different figures in front of him, with amazing momentum and the posture of swinging weapons diagonally, with almost the same difference. He was a little doubtful, then, the next moment, his expression changed drastically. That could it be? Without hesitation, he opened his bloody mouth. Blast breath. The dazzling fire, carrying a powerful conqueror haki, blasted fiercely towards Luke and others. Devastating strike. Including Luke himself, 9 figures with terrifying momentum. Without reservation, they all blasted out an extremely powerful blow. Buzz. Like a rotten tree, the atmosphere was twisted and crushed. Boom. The dazzling light and radiance shone there. It was extremely dazzling, and it was impossible to look directly at it. Boom. It didn't last long before the terrifying shockwave directly destroyed the incoming column of fire. Its power did not decrease, and it blasted unstoppable toward the blue dragon. Boom. Ah! The explosion shook the sky. The blue dragon wailed in pain and was blasted away directly. Boom. The devastated ground collapsed like a spider web, and smoke and dust filled the sky. Kaido had already left the beast form and fell heavily to the ground. He seemed to have lost consciousness for a short time. He took a blow from Luke, his shadow clone, and the 7 zombie kings. Even the strongest creature on land, sea, and air, like Kaido, was hit hard. Hey, such an attack won't kill a monster like you directly, right? Luke looked straight at the ruins in front of him, which were shrouded in smoke and dust. Then his clasped hands, like a red-hot iron, were filled with wisps of hot steam. This is an unparalleled and world-shattering blow. It was with the power of the shadow fruit that he obtained the relevant moves from the residual memories of Captain John and Shiki's shadows, the joint attack technique of the Rocks Pirates, devastating strike. Only he, his own shadow clone, and the zombie king created from his split shadow can cooperate in such a short time to launch this terrifying attack. Attack. Don't give this guy a chance to breathe. At Luke's command, including himself, 9 figures rushed out at the same time. Swish. One by one, they rushed into the billowing smoke and dust that had not yet dissipated with murderous intent. Fists, feet, swords, and other weapons are wrapped with powerful armament haki as they fall down. Kai. Bang. Boom. They have no intention to give Kaido a chance to breathe. Chapter 222, Outcome. Early in the morning, a touch of fiery red appeared in the sky. Most of the pirates on the Onigashima are still sleeping soundly. Boom. But without any warning, a loud explosion suddenly came, waking up the pirates who were sleeping soundly and still dreaming. Enemy attack. What's going on? Quick, what is that? It seems that someone. Soon, one pirate from the Beast Pirates ran after another in the direction of the noise. Looking at the huge pit filled with smoke and dust in front of the huge skeleton building, they were somewhat shocked. The previous invasion of Obaskluk was vivid. For a moment, everyone held swords and guns tightly. Their eyes were fixed on the front, full of vigilance. But the next moment, as the smoke and dust gradually dissipated, their pupils suddenly dilated. Ah! Are you kidding me? Gulu. How? Is this possible? Governor General Kaido. Kaido-sama. For a moment, all these pirates had their eyes bulging. They opened their mouths wide and couldn't close them for a long time. Their jaws almost dropped to the ground. What happened? Kaido-sama. Who hurt him like this? Impossible, absolutely impossible. Yes. I must have seen it wrong. Haha, I drank too much yesterday, and I'm still drunk? Yes, Kaido-sama is the strongest creature on land, sea, and air. How could he fail? It hurts, damn it, I'm not dreaming. Don't stand there, notified Obarapo and King-sama. Damn, is it Whitebeard? Or the 3 admirals of the Marines? At the huge pit, Kadio's tall figure, with blood dripping and bruises all over his body, was embedded in the ground. These pirates were all speechless in disbelief and couldn't believe their eyes. They rubbed their eyes vigorously, and some even slapped themselves hard for fear that they were dazzled or dreaming and confirmed it again and again. But the cruel reality forced them to accept it. The tall figure in the giant pit, covered in blood and tortured beyond human form, was the invincible Governor General of Beasts Pirate in their minds, the strongest creature on land, sea, and air, Kaido. For a moment, they were all at a loss, and cold sweats ran down their faces. They felt cold, and their scalps were numb. What's the matter? Why are you so panicked? What a fuss, the guy who... The Tobirapo were alarmed. Ulti, Sasaki, Who's Who, Black Maria, and others came one after another. Looking at those panicked and sweaty pirates, they scolded harshly there. What? Kaido-sama? Hey, are you kidding me? But as they arrived in front of the giant pit, looking at the fierce and bloody tall figure with horns on his head, everyone was stunned, and their jaws dropped to the ground. Fortunately, there is still breath, Kaido-sama is still alive. Black Maria was sweating profusely and busy checking Kaido's condition. Although the injury was extremely serious, if it was someone else, she's afraid they would have died long ago. But Kaido is indeed worthy of being called the strongest creature on land, sea, and air. His vitality is too strong, and he is still alive. It's just that the injury was too serious, and he fell unconscious. Gulu. What's going on? Looking at the miserable and unconscious Kaido, Sasaki swallowed his saliva and said in disbelief, didn't Kaido-sama say that he was going to Dressrosa to settle accounts with Obaskluk? What are you all doing here? At this time, a tall, round figure with a big belly came over with people. Queen-sama, are you back from the expedition? Seeing the person coming, a pirate hurriedly said. Hearing the news that Kurizumi Orochi was killed and Wano country was in turmoil, he returned back to Onigashima. Queen, who had just walked to the front, raised his eyebrows. Is Kaido-sama drunk again? He looked like he was not surprised, and then he slowly looked below with a cigar in his mouth. Kaido-sama. Nani? The next second, his voice stopped abruptly, and his cigar fell to the ground while his eyeballs almost flew out. Who hurt Kaido-sama like this? I don't know, but the Governor-General was going to Dressrosa to find trouble with Obaskluk. Sasaki said in a deep voice, just now, he suddenly appeared here. I'm afraid it has something to do with Obaskluk. Who suddenly spoke? What? You mean, a mere newcomer like Obaskluk can hurt Kaido-sama like this? Queen glared at him fiercely. I didn't say that. Who pointed at the injuries on Kaido's body and said bluntly, look, Kaido-sama's injuries, in addition to the marks left by blunt blows from fists and feet. There are also a lot of sword wounds, and they are not caused by the same sword. I'm afraid the Netherworld pirates attacked together and beat Kaido-sama. As a former CP9 elite agent, due to his professional sensitivity, he noticed something wrong at first glance. It was quickly determined that Kaido had become like this, and most likely, he was besieged by more than one strong man. Indeed. Hearing what who said, including Queen, Sasaki, Black Maria, and others were stunned. These details are not difficult to find, but they were just too shocked by the fact that Kaido was injured like this and was unconscious, and they didn't have time to pay attention to it. That guy is so despicable. Ulti clenched her pink fist, gritted her teeth, and said, he can't beat Kaido-sama, so he actually ganged up on him. Damn. Obaskluk, that bastard dared to hurt Kaido-sama like this. Ulti was a little furious. Originally, when she heard that Kaido was going to cause trouble for Obaskluk, she didn't take it to heart at all. After all, Kaido is recognized as the strongest creature on land, sea, and air in this sea. Even Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world, wanted to avenge his former brother Kazuki-Oden, but he still did not dare to lead the Whitebeard pirates to enter Wano country and fight against the Beast's pirates. Luke, a newcomer, could not stop Kaido even if he had a good reputation. Unexpectedly, such an operation would happen. It was unbelievable. But even if it was enough to show that the strength of the Netherworld pirates was probably no less than that of the Beast's pirates. Looking deeply at Kaido, who was covered in wounds and had not yet woken up, who said faintly, you know, even if we, the Tobirappo, plus you, the three calamities, are not the opponents of Kaido-sama. Or, he has joined forces with the prisoners of the eternal hell in the Impel Down. His tone was full of jealousy. He couldn't calm down and felt some unspeakable jealousy. He is also a member of CP9 who rebelled against the world government. In less than a year, Obaskluk has reached this point. Even a monster like Kaido can't do anything to him. And he, who, can only be inferior to others. He's just a small Tobirappo, not even as good as the three calamities. Chapter 223, Giant Army Luke. Luke-sama, you're back. At Dressrosa, seeing Luke return safely, the Netherworld pirates were surprised and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Although they had confidence in Luke, after all, the other party had to face the strongest creatures on land, sea, and air. Luke-sama, is it solved? Sure, you asked. Well, I even drew a few more tubes of blood. Luke looked relaxed and shrugged, but it's too early to kill him now. It will only benefit the world government and the Marines in vain. As long as Kaido doesn't come to make trouble again, I'll keep him alive for now. As he said that, he stomped his feet. In the shadows, the figure of Caponvaj emerged and directly activated his Devil Fruit ability to release the 7 zombie kings inside his body. Swish. One figure after another stood there, and they looked completely fine, surprising everyone present. They didn't expect the operation to be so smooth this time. "Isn't it said Kaido is the strongest creature on land, sea, and air? That's it." However, when they think of Luke's own strength and the strength of these zombie kings, they feel relieved. If Kaido alone could resist such a siege of 9 strong men, that would be too abnormal. "Hogback, are those corpses repaired?" Luke looked directly at Hogback. He was looking forward to creating a new giant army and giving the Marines some big surprises. "Please rest assured, these corpses are well preserved and have almost all been repaired." Hogback had red eyes and a tired face but was full of excitement and said confidently, "They can be resurrected at any time." In order to seize the time to repair these corpses, he didn't rest all night and kept activating his devil fruit ability, which was very tiring. Fortunately, under Luke's high-pressure training for more than half a year, he persisted. His physical fitness has been greatly enhanced, and he is no longer the weakling like in the past. Only then can he continue to use his devil fruit ability and persist until the end. "Well, you've worked hard." Luke patted his shoulder. He led everyone to the ice cave of Punk Hazard. There were corpses of different sizes, some of which were eerie and shocking, arranged in order. There were 2 types of giants, an ordinary giant, and an ancient giant. The tallest one even exceeded the oars, no less than 70 or 80 meters high. It was extremely exaggerated. There were also thousands of prisoners of various races, including ordinary humans. Swish! A large number of black shadows surged. One shadow ball after another flew out and expanded there before penetrating the corpse before it. "Arise, my loyal servants." Luke's eyes flash with a red light as he directly activates the ability of the shadow fruit. Swish! These shadows all come from the prisoners in the 4th level, Blazing Hell, the 5th level, Freezing Hell, and the 6th level, Eternal Hell of the Impel Down. There are even many super shadows made through Shadow Tailor that are stuffed into the bodies of ordinary giants and even ancient giants. Shadow Tailor, combine many shadows into one, they sink slowly into the bodies of those corpses at a speed visible to the naked eye. Plop! A series of strong heartbeats echoed continuously. The corpses that had long lost their breath of life gradually regained their vitality and became lifelike, and then they all opened their eyes. "Master!" The ground rumbled. No matter if they were zombies made from corpses of various races, the normal giant or the ancient giant, they all began to move, making the ice cave crack and make it a little difficult to stand. Then they knelt on one knee one by one. It was a spectacular and shocking sight. TSK, so many zombie giants gathered together, it's really scary. Looking at those huge figures that looked like monsters from hell and full of oppression, Shiryulu exclaimed. He began to look forward to the war coming soon. These giant zombie corps were basically made of the shadows of the strong men from the freezing hell and the eternal hell. Even those ancient giants were stuffed with combined shadows of strong men. Their combat power would not be weaker than when they were alive. Even because of the combat awareness of various strong men, they might be even stronger. All the preparations have been made. Looking at the astonishing number of the aggressive giant corps in front of him, Luke folded his arms and smiled. Next, it's time to patiently wait. This time, he didn't just want to make trouble. Otherwise, he would not deliberately stop Kaido and wait here patiently for the Marines' Buster Call fleet to arrive. At this time, he was preparing to deal the biggest blow to the Marines, wanting to bury the entire Marine fleet at sea. Either they don't fight, or they fight a big one, directly pulling out their fangs and claws. First, they cut off the arms of the giant world government. Then, they would slowly accumulate strength and boil the frog in warm water. Hogback, how are those guys recovering? Luke asked directly. With my pop fruit ability, Hogback's repair fruit, and the heal fruit ability of the dwarf princess, Mangekyō, after a few days of recuperation, the functions of those guys in all aspects of their bodies have almost recovered. Law carried a sword and said with a smile, however, considering that they have been trapped for too long, it is hard to say whether they can exert their peak combat power. Hiss, Luke-sama, those guys are quite difficult to get along with. Dr. Hogback asked with some concern, is it really okay to let them out? Those unruly guys were once notorious monsters on the sea, and they are not so easy to succumb to. Cooperating with them is tantamount to seeking the skin of a tiger. It is hard to say when they will turn against them. Don't worry, their hearts are with me. If they want freedom, they have to cooperate with us. Luke didn't worry at all and sneered, besides, they hate the Marines to the extreme, I believe they are willing to lend us a hand. Chapter 224, 8 new members run. Those guys from the world government. They are actually going to launch a buster call against Dressrosa. Damn it. At this moment, Violet made up her mind and officially announced the truth to the citizens. The entire Dressrosa has fallen into unprecedented panic and chaos. A large number of citizens rushed to pack their belongings and drag their families to escape from there. At Violet's request, Luke asked Shiryu to use the power of the float fruit to send those citizens to other places for refuge. As for Dressrosa, considering that the Marines might lock its location through the Vivre card. In addition, Luke was not very interested in this country, so he was not going to move it away directly. At this moment, in the magnificent castle at King's Plateau, in the magnificent hall, a huge long table was placed there. All the members of the Netherworld Pirates gathered here and sat on both sides. In addition to members such as Law, Kid, Wiper, Desire, Lafitte, Brook, Hogback, and Dasbones, there are also several new faces of different shapes and sizes. All of them were selected by Luke from the prisoners of Eternal Hell. They were notorious in the past and were willing to join the Netherworld Pirates. Iron Fist, Fox, Paramsha Hard Fruit User, Evil Child, Alice, Paramsha Hobby Fruit User, Crescent Moon Hunter, Katrina Devon, Paramsha Smooth Fruit User, Heavy Drinker, Vasco Shot, Paramsha Glug Fruit User, Corrupt King, Avalo Pizarro, Paramsha Ilile Fruit User, Blood Claw, Burn, Dragon Fruit, Model, Allosaurus User, Stone Giant, Johnson, Paramsha Stone Fruit User, Heavy Puncher, Kate, Paramsha Ton Fruit User. All of them are pirates with amazing strength and bounties exceeding 500 million. Except for Vasco Shot the Heavy Drinker and Avalo Pizarro, the Corrupt King, who was originally Devil Fruit Users, Katrina Devon, the Crescent Moon Hunter, Alice the Evil Child, Fox the Iron Fist, Burn the Blood Claw, Johnson, the Stone Giant and Kate the Heavy Puncher were not originally Devil Fruit Users. After joining the Netherworld Pirates, Luke gave them Devil Fruits. As for the Paramsha Hobby Fruit, Stone Fruit, and Ton Fruit, naturally, Luke asked Wapol to take them from the cadres of the Don Quixote family. As for the Paramsha Smooth Fruit, it was found by the Shadowkin sent out 2 days ago from East Blue. Katrina Devon, the Crescent Moon Hunter, this vicious female pirate who was originally ugly and liked to collect the heads of beautiful women and was imprisoned in the Eternal Hell, learned that Luke had the Smooth Fruit, which could make people beautiful. She immediately agreed to Luke's recruitment without hesitation. In the original timeline, she was the Devil Fruit User of the Dog Fruit, Model, Nine-Tailed Fox, but that fruit had been intercepted by Luke and was given to Karina. But now she is the Devil Fruit User of the Smooth Fruit. She originally had a hot figure, and under the effect of the Smooth Fruit, her ugly and shocking face has become youthful and extremely beautiful, with smooth and tender skin. Her whole body has undergone a drastic change, from an ugly monster to a real peerless beauty. The LSPS, perverts, of the Netherworld Pirates were all a little excited and fascinated by her. However, Luke, who had seen her true face and was surrounded by beautiful women, naturally declined the offer. He gave this great opportunity to his subordinates. Of course, these unruly and ambitious guys were so calm. The most important thing was that Luke severely taught them a lesson, and they fully witnessed the true power of this young monster. They were in awe and did not dare to act rashly. Let's start. Luke sat in the main seat with a big sword, then he gestured to Robin, who was sitting on his left. According to our intelligence. Robin nodded gently and stood up with the document in her hand, looked around at the people present, and said in a deep voice, "The Marines' Buster Call this time has dispatched 3 admirals representing the highest combat power from the Marine headquarters, including the 2 admiral candidates, Momouzagi and Topacake, 10 vice admirals, and countless other officers. Not counting the logistics, the total force is more than 30,000 people, and they are all elite Marines. It is expected to arrive in a sea area near Dressrosa in 2 days. TSK, such an exaggerated battle, they are almost out in full force, right? If it were any force in the Grand Line, I'm afraid they would not be able to stop it, and they can only avoid the edge for the time being. 3 admirals are out together, plus 2 admiral candidates and 10 vice admirals from the Marine headquarters. These guys are determined to make a concerted effort to completely eliminate us. I think if it weren't for the time being too rushed and there would be no time to make more deployments and to gather the forces of other branches on a large scale, I am afraid that they will directly dispatch more than 50,000 elite Marines. After all, although they don't know the specific strength and trump cards of our Netherworld Pirates, they must also guard against Luke Sama being forced into a corner and directly releasing all the prisoners in the Impel Down to fight them to the death. Listening to Robin's detailed information. Law, Kid, Reiju, Perona, Brook, Urge, Jin, Kuro, Bartolomeo, and others, although they have been mentally prepared, still can't help but be a little surprised. If it was at the beginning, they were still a little worried. After all, they were facing the world's well-deserved overlord of the sea. But as they gradually understood Luke's plan and deployment, coupled with the powerful strength shown by him and blocking Kaido, the strongest creature on land, sea, and air. They have completely put their mind at ease and without any worries at all. Instead, they are full of confidence and fighting spirit and are eager to fight. Chapter 225, Falling Island. Time flies. 2 days passed in a flash. The sea area near Dressrosa. The sky was covered with dark clouds, and heavy rain fell from the sky. A huge fleet of astonishing numbers was swaying in the wind and waves, moving slowly forward. Ship after ship of various sizes, like chess pieces, were scattered far away from each other on the sea. This damn weather is really unpleasant. On the flagship, in the cabin, Admiral Akainu from the Marine headquarters stood there with his arms folded, looking resolute. Looking at the gloomy sky outside and thumb-sized raindrops, like dense water arrows that kept hitting the deck, he frowned and asked directly, "How long will it take to reach the destination?" "Admiral Akainu, it is estimated that the fleet will arrive at Dressrosa in 2 hours." A Marine saluted there and reported. 2 hours. Akainu's eyes were stern. His clenched fists turned a little red, emitting a hot and thick smoke visible to the naked eye, and then he said with some murderous intent, "This time, we must get rid of the Netherworld pirates in one fell swoop and not let those prisoners in the Impel Down escape." "Sakazuki, don't be too careless." On the sofa nearby, Kizaru, wearing a striped suit, had some bandages tied around his body. He was sitting there with his legs crossed, and he kindly reminded him, "Obaskluk's strength is not simple. And what kind of strength the Netherworld pirates have is still a mystery." Aokiji, who was lazily leaning on the sofa nearby, also said in a deep voice, "Especially once the Netherworld pirates are desperate, if they jump over the wall and release all the prisoners, it's also a big trouble. Of course, the worst result is that they avoid fighting and run away directly." I'm afraid no one expected it. The 3 admirals from the Marine headquarters gathered in the small cabin. To be able to hurt Borsellino, a guy who has always been slippery, like this, that kid is really not simple. Akainu did not refute this because he still knows the strength of his comrade in arms, Kizaru, very well. In a short period of time, Obaskluk successively severely injured Garp and Kizaru and then led people to quietly invade the Impel Downs and empty the whole prison. Obaskluk is obviously not to be underestimated. But no matter how they struggle, there is only one outcome for them. That will be death. Akainu's tone was firm, and his sharp eyes were full of grim lines. Without even turning his head, he gave the order, "Notify everyone to be alert to prevent the Netherworld pirates from launching a sudden attack." I think Obaskluk has probably received the news and will never sit still and wait for death. If the worst happens and Obaskluk escapes with the Netherworld pirates in order to save the reputation and prestige of the Marines and the world government, the Marines' buster call will not stop and will destroy the Dressrosa. Unless these guys use the power of the float fruit to move the entire Dressrosa away. Understood. At this moment, they don't know that the sky, which is covered with dark clouds, has several huge islands lying there. Luke-sama, they have reached the target location. Wiper's huge observation hockey always monitors the movements of the Marines' buster call fleet. This rainstorm came quite timely, even God is on our side. Sure let's start. Luke bowed his head. Looking at the sky, which was covered by dark clouds, he showed a playful smile. Originally, he was going to let Lucci, Wiper, and Nami use their devil fruit abilities to create or attract a large number of clouds as camouflage to hide the islands in the sky. Unexpectedly, this sudden rainstorm directly helped him achieve this goal. Okay. Ho. For a while, in the sky, several huge islands suddenly, as if they had lost their support, fell straight down and continuously accelerated towards the sea below. The marine fleet that was in formation right below them was the first to be hit. Whoosh. As the exaggerated island fell, the violent piercing sound instantly attracted the attention of Akainu, Aokiji, Kizaru, and others. Their expressions couldn't help but change, and they instantly used their observation hockey to sense the crisis. Without hesitation, they rushed out of the cabin and looked at the sky. Whoosh. Ah. What is that? An island? Are you kidding me? Damn it, it's over. We can't avoid it. On the warships scattered and orderly on the sea, like stars in the sky, countless Marines were alarmed. Everyone stared at the sky with wide eyes in horror while sweating profusely. Because in the blink of an eye, the dark clouds had been smashed through. One after another, the huge islands were rubbing against the atmosphere violently as they fell down at an alarming speed. Damn it. Looking at the islands getting closer, with great momentum, Akainu's expression changed drastically. Is it the ability of the float fruit? These guys actually hid the islands in the sky in advance. Looking at the huge island in the sky that was falling rapidly, Aokiji couldn't help but sweat. Although he was mentally prepared and deliberately dispersed the fleet. But he didn't expect that the other party would suddenly give them such a gift at this time. Such an ability is really unsolvable. Kizaru was full of helplessness. In fact, even if they, the admirals of the Marines, have monster-like strength and are able to easily destroy a town or a country in a short period of time, it is impossible to easily destroy an island. When facing such an attack, it is almost impossible to stop it, and they can only dodge it. Boom. 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 The loud noise shook the sky. One after another, the islands, with an unparalleled force, fall down one after another. Some warships that were in the coverage area had no time to escape and were directly blasted into the seabed, setting off huge waves that formed an unprecedented tsunami that swept in all directions. It was going to overturn and capsize the other warships around. At this moment, the scene was like the end of the world. Ice Age. Instantly, a green figure jumped out, his open hands surging with cold air. Two icicles condensed out like lightning and sank into the churning sea. Swish. In the blink of an eye, the sea surface, which was surging like the end of the world, was directly frozen at a speed visible to the naked eye. Terrifying waves of hundreds and thousands of meters high were directly frozen into icebergs and stopped there, saving those warships that were not hit head-on and were almost overturned and submerged by the huge waves. It reversed the outcome of the entire fleet being almost annihilated. It was indescribably shocking. Chapter 226, Absolute Confidence. We're saved. I thought I was going to die. Gulu. What kind of monster is this? They actually dropped the island from the sky. Thanks to Admiral Aokiji, we are safe. On the warships that were frozen in the sea and could not move, the Marines officers sat there while sweating profusely, full of fear and anxiety, like they had survived a disaster, as they gasped for breath. Looking at the icebergs that were so huge and unreachable around them, as if they were really going to fall down, and the warships that were frozen on the top of the huge waves. It made people's scalps numb. That bastard Obaskluk. Looking at the completely frozen sea, Akanu's expression was extremely gloomy. It's really terrible, almost the whole fleet was wiped out. With a flash of light, Borsalino's figure fell from the sky. He spread his hands to Akanu, the Supreme Commander. Those guys have already slipped away. Sakazuki, the loss this time is too great. Although we have dispersed the fleet as much as possible, we are still a little careless. Aokiji returned to the flagship with a solemn face and said to Akanu, who was livid, in a deep voice, just now, at least a dozen warships were hit head-on before they could escape, including 6 large battleships. In addition, several warships that were too close were overturned by huge waves. There was no time to save them, and they were directly buried together with the personnel on them. Except for those who have the hope of being thought and rescued, I am afraid that the loss will be no less than 6,000 or 7,000 people. This is the power of the float fruit. In terms of strategic value, it is not inferior to the Parimsha quake fruit at all, and it is even more terrifying. In the beginning, Shiki relied on this ability to lead the Golden Lion pirates to come and go like the wind. It gave the world government a headache and made it afraid. Afraid that at any time, several islands would suddenly fall from the sky. Those bastards. Akanu's expression turned black, and the veins on his forehead bulged, and his eyes were spitting fire. He gnashed his teeth, and his clenched fists emitted thick smoke. I won't let them go. The failure of the campaign made him extremely angry and aggrieved. Sakazuki, now is not the time to be angry. Borsalino reminded him, we still have to melt this ice first. You don't need to remind me. Sakazuki took a deep breath. He suppressed his anger and looked at the sea cover. His arms were directly emitting hot magma, and the extremely hot breath spread everywhere. At this moment, the temperature in the atmosphere kept rising, making people dare not to approach at all. Meteor volcano. His magma-like fists were waving wildly. Swish. The piercing sound continued. One huge magma bomb after another, carrying unparalleled impact force, blasted in all directions. It avoided those warships and slammed hard on the ice surface, directly melting a large area of the ice surface and even boiling it. Boom. Sizzle. Back in Dressrosa, in the castle on the King's Plateaus. Luke-sama, the frozen sea has been thawed by Akanu's magma. Their fleet began to continue to approach Dressrosa. The Shadowkin who went to investigate the situation reported to Luke there. Hey, it's really exciting. Shiryu licked his lips with burning eyes. Not only he but all the members of the Netherworld pirates present were eager to fight and were full of high fighting spirit and confidence. Pay close attention. Luke issued an order before walking towards the corridor and coming straight to a hall. I apologize for offending you guys in the past few days. 3 tall figures with different shapes and cold faces were seen sitting there with their arms folded and their sharp eyes staring at him. An invisible momentum also spread in the hall. If it were anyone else, they would probably be trembling with fear and feel extremely uneasy. But Luke was calm and unmoved. He looked at the 3 people present and said with a smile, The Marines' fleet is almost here, and I just gave them a welcome gift. Next, I'll ask you three to help. Don't talk so nicely, this is just a deal. A fierce-looking figure with a brownish-green beard and a helmet looked directly at Luke and said with a grin, "Anyway, I am so angry that I want to settle accounts with those despicable and shameless guys in the world government. But if you don't return my heart after the war, don't blame me for turning against you." "Of course." Luke smiled slightly. He spread his hands and said frankly, "I am not naive enough to think that I can easily make monsters like you surrender with just a heart. Just to be on the safe side, I have to do this. But you don't have to be so angry." Looking at the three monsters released from the eternal hell in front of him, Luke smiled and said, "Each of you is responsible for holding back a Marine's admiral or admiral candidate, and help me get rid of those guys, just as the price for releasing you from Impel Down. Although I don't like being controlled by others, and I don't want to cooperate with anyone." On the sofa next to him, a tall and thin figure with a pigtail, wearing aristocratic clothes and a red cloak, said lightly, "But this time, for the sake of the bat fruit, model, vampire, I can make an exception and help you once. It just so happens that I have to settle the account of being imprisoned in the Impel Downs by those guys in the Marines. Don't get me wrong, I'm not helping you, I just want to kill those Marines guys." The third figure sat there with his arms folded. He was tall, muscular, and in military uniform. He looked at Luke with a burning gaze, full of blazing fighting spirit. "But Hobask Luke, you are indeed a good opponent, I have reserved your head." If there were any experienced admirals who had served in the Marines for a long time here, they would definitely be shocked and speechless. The three figures in front of Luke were all monsters that were notorious on the sea in the past. World Destroyer, Burndye World, Red the Aloof, Patrick Redfield, Damon Eyre, Douglas Bullet. And, what is unbelievable is that Redfield, who had been imprisoned in the Impel Down for many years and was already old, has actually regained his youth. "No problem, I'm always here if you want to fight." Luke laughed and responded to Douglas Bullet without showing any weakness. The tone of his voice was full of strong confidence, "But when the time comes, don't be too disappointed, I won't lose." That's right, from the beginning. The powerful monsters in eternal hell. Luke was not prepared to use their shadows to create zombies. He was also not prepared to directly recover those quite strong devil fruit but to release them to play a big game with the Marines. He even gave the bat fruit, model, vampire, to Redfield so that the other party could regain his youth and exert his peak combat power. This time, he wanted to give the Marines no chance to escape. Considering that even if the zombies created by the shadows of these monsters were stronger than the zombie king created from his own split shadows, it would be better to let them play a greater role. Even if they are only used temporarily, it would be fine. After all, compared to severely damaging the Marines and weakening the power of the world government to the greatest extent, these are not worth mentioning. In the final analysis, with his current strength, even if he lets them go, he can catch them back at any time. This is Luke's absolute confidence in his own strength. Chapter 227, Annihilate them. Beep. 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 Attention all fleets, we have arrived at the target location, Dressrosa. We have also found the thriller bark of the Netherworld pirates. All personnel immediately enter the first-level combat alertness and prepare for battle. On the sea, one warship after another surrounded Dressrosa from all directions with a murderous intent. Admiral Akainu, we have arrived near Dressrosa, and the fleet has surrounded this sea area. In addition to the thriller bark, the whereabouts of Punk Hazard were also discovered, and another island was also moved beside the Dressrosa. On the flagship, a marine asked, "Are we going to launch an attack immediately? Have we finally reached it? How arrogant. But I hope these guys won't run away later." Akainu clenched his fists, looking at the islands in the distance, his eyes revealed a murderous intent. Without hesitation, the order coldly, "All ships, open fire. Destroy the thriller bark and those islands first." Yes. However, without waiting for the ship commander to give the order, a sharp and piercing sound broke through the air suddenly. Swish. A dazzling laser beam, with the speed of thunder, blasted towards the flagship where Akainu was. Moreover, it kept changing and enlarging at a speed visible to the naked eye. From a laser beam with a diameter of less than 2 fingers, it became a laser beam with a diameter that was thicker than an adult's thigh. Its speed was even faster than lightning, making it impossible for people to react at all. In an instant, it had already appeared before the warship on the front. What's this? On the flagship, Aokiji, who was sitting there, couldn't no longer remain calm. Not only he but also the other high-ranking officials in the entire fleet were shocked. Laser beam? Damn it. Akainu, who was the first to bear the brunt of it, had a drastic change of expression. He stepped hard, and his whole body was ejected like a cannonball. His right arm turned into rolling magma, and it kept expanding. The exaggerated giant magma fist was wrapped with powerful armament hockey, burned the atmosphere. Like an underwater volcano erupting, it carried an unimaginable force and fiercely collided with a large laser beam. Great eruption. Boom. The loud explosion due to the collision shook the sky. The strong light was dazzling, and it was impossible to look directly at it. A large amount of boiling magma kept splashing and made a sizzling sound as it made contact with the seawater. Woo! Clatter. The waves on the sea were surging, and the shock waves swept over, pushing the warship back. The marine personnel were caught off guard, and all stood unsteadily. Ah! What's going on? Gulu. It's Admiral Borslino's laser beam. No, it's bigger than the laser beam he usually releases. Damn it, the Netherworld pirates actually mastered such an exaggerated laser technology. Is it because of Dr. Vegapunk? Whether it was this flagship or the dozens of warships scattered on the sea and the people on the Dressrosa, they couldn't help but stare with wide-open eyes, revealing an unbelievable look. The next moment, a laser beam shot out again and hit a large warship, making it explode and igniting a raging fire amidst the countless marine screams. Swish. 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 In the blink of an eye, as if a command had been triggered. One dazzling laser beam after another shoots from multiple directions from the thriller bark, Dressrosa, Punk Hazard, and the nameless deserted island. Clang. 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 In the blink of an eye, several figures with amazing momentum rushed out from the various large warships. They were all the vice admirals from the marine headquarters, and all of them used moon steps to rush to the midair. They waved their weapons that were unsheathed like lightning and were wrapped with armament hockey to block the incoming laser beams and protect the warships behind them. However, the warships in other directions were not so lucky. Boom. 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 There were continuous loud explosions, and flames shot up into the sky. One warship after another exploded continuously and sank to the bottom of the sea at a speed visible to the naked eye. Ah! Countless Marines screamed. Some were blown away by the blast like paper or were directly affected by the flames and let out terrified screams there. But many people also jumped into the sea in panic. Damn it! On the flagship in the lead, Okainu, who had blocked the large laser beam just now, landed steadily on the deck. His face was ashen, and he was a little furious. Those bastards actually mastered such a weapon. Not to mention the dozens of warships that were destroyed by the falling island before, the Buster Call fleet, which originally had more than 60 warships of various types. At least 20 to 30 ships were destroyed by the terrible firepower of the Netherworld pirates just now. It was equivalent to half of their fleet having been lost before they even engaged in the war, which was a really bad start. How could Sakazuki, the supreme commander of the Buster Call fleet, not be angry? Damn it, was it that guy Vegapunk who did it? No, in terms of time, it's not possible. After all, Vegapunk was kidnapped not long ago. Even if he was a coward and surrendered directly, it would be impossible for him to produce so many laser cannons at once. With so many laser cannons, they probably have already mastered such technology a long time ago. In real-time communication, the voices of Admiral Aokiji, Vice Admiral Momouzagi, Vice Admiral Tokakake, Vice Admiral Momonga, Vice Admiral Onigamo, and other Vice Admirals also came from the Den Mushi where they are discussing. Don't worry about it. All fleets open fire immediately. Okainu ordered loudly, annihilate them. Received. After receiving the order, the commanders of the warships began to issue firing orders one after another. Quick. Fire. Bang. Boom. Chapter 228, Anger. The flames shot up into the sky. Countless shells were thrown on each island, making violent explosions occur. The fire was blazing, and thick smoke was billowing. Whoosh. The piercing sound continued, and a large number of shells were thrown at the thriller bark as the primary target. Slicing wave. The dazzling flying slash directly split the incoming shells into two, making them explode in the air. Boom. At the same time, in other directions, there was also a flying slash that cut through the shells, blocking the Marines' bombardment. Golden Lion, even a guy like you was killed. Leaning on a black umbrella, Redfield looked at the miserable state of Shiki and sighed, and it was turned into a zombie. Time really doesn't spare anyone. Relying on the vampire fruit, he has regained his youth and has become more resolute in his lofty beliefs. How high-spirited were the former Golden Lion pirates? How powerful were the former Golden Lion pirates? No matter how many subordinates, no matter how many companions. In the end, it was all in vain. Not far from the coast. Wow! This laser weapon is surprisingly useful. A tall figure wearing a helmet, with a brown beard and a fierce face, was laughing there. It was Burnt Eye World, the world destroyer. He was carrying a chain fire gun that looked like a rocket launcher and had a sci-fi feel. Then he aimed it directly at the large battleship in front and pulled the trigger without hesitation. More 30-fold cannon. Whoosh! Dazzling beams of light appear in circles from time to time, and then they continue to magnify and accelerate at a speed visible to the naked eye. The huge beam was so dazzling that it was impossible to look directly at it. In the blink of an eye, it bombarded the front of the group of warships in the distance. Don't even think about it. A rear admiral rushed out and tried to block it. But he obviously overestimated himself and was unable to intercept the terrifying large laser cannon. His expression changed grayly, he was filled with fear and was directly drowned by the dazzling, spreading light. Boom. Let alone the Marines, even the members of the Netherworld Pirates, looked at the warship that exploded on the sea in an instant in shock. TSK, the more fruit is really terrifying. Law exclaimed there. It can multiply the size and speed of all non-living targets it touches, and even the destructive power increases exponentially. Van Auger, a sniper on the side, it is indeed an enviable ability. While speaking, he has already aimed at the target in front, locked on the commander on a distant warship, and pulled the trigger directly. 3 rounds of bullets fire in a row. Swish. 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 A piercing sound came as one invisible bullet after another, wrapped in half-baked armament hockey, penetrated the atmosphere at a speed far exceeding that of ordinary bullets. Then, it accurately hit the commander of the medium-sized warship. Although he sensed the crisis and tried to dodge it, he could only barely dodge the first 2 invisible bullets, and he was hit head-on by the 3rd bullet. Rear Admiral Mike. Damn it, everyone be careful. There's a sniper. On the distant warship, looking at Rear Admiral, who was originally directing them to fire but was suddenly shot in the head and fell there. One by one, the Marines were shocked and screamed there. Boom. 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 At this time, on the other side of the coast, a golden light shot out, and another warship was hit by the dazzling laser beam. It exploded there and ignited a blazing fire. Hey, very interesting stuff. I didn't expect you to have such a thing. Douglas Bullet said to Luke next to him with a grin while holding up a laser cannon. The laser cannon was originally no less than the size of a rocket launcher, but in his large hand, it was like a normal pistol. As long as you are satisfied. These are my gifts to you. Luke smiled and said with a chuckle, next, it depends on your performance. In front of him, there are a large number of memory alloy steel plates. In addition, there are brand new laser cannons and various rocket launchers, Gatling guns, and other hot weapons. With Douglas Bullet's Pamsha Clank Fruit ability, if he can integrate these memory alloys with advanced weapons, the combat effectiveness he can exert will definitely increase exponentially. After being imprisoned for more than 10 years, Douglas Bullet's ability has not yet awakened and needs to be strengthened. Therefore, he deliberately sent this as a gift. Hey, then I won't be polite. Douglas Bullet bared his teeth and showed a playful smile, and then his eyes suddenly became stern. A strange force swept out in an instant. Swish. Swish. All of a sudden, these memory metals and weapons turned into particle-like fluids and directly submerged Douglas Bullet, then they combined at a speed visible to the naked eye. Union Armada. In the blink of an eye, a robot about 10 meters high with a 9 logo stood there. The lines were rough and shining with metallic luster. The muzzles of the guns made people's scalps numb. With the use of his Devil Fruit ability, Douglas Bullet directly fused a large amount of form memory metal and weapons to combine a robot. Is this the power of the Clank Fruit? It's really exaggerated. He actually directly made a robot. Nami, Robin, Perona, Lafitte, and others around couldn't help but be dumbfounded. It's been a long time since I used it. While driving this robot, Douglas Bullet smiled excitedly. At the moment of combination, he already felt the specialness of these materials. The combination of such alloy materials and these powerful weapons can double his power. Looking at the warships on the sea, his terrifying eyes revealed madness and murderous intent. Then, Marines, bear the baptism of my anger that I kept for more than 10 years. The next moment, it shone with dazzling brilliance, and the black laser gun barrels were aimed at warships. At this moment, dangerous breath spread from Bullet as the center. Swish. The next moment, one after another, terrifying laser beams continuously bombarded the warships scattered on the sea. Boom. 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 Chapter 229, Score to Settle On the sea, flames shot up into the sky, and explosions continued. One warship after another was hit by laser beams and exploded directly. Gulu. It's the Demon Heir, Douglas Bullet. World Destroyer, Burned I World, and Red the Aloof, Patrick Redfield. Heavy Drinker, Vasco Shot, Corrupt King, Avalo Pizarro, Crescent Moon Hunter, Evil Child, Alice, Iron Fist, Fox, Blood Claw, Burn, Stone Giant, Johnson and Heavy Puncher, Kate. All of them are the notorious prisoners in eternal hell. On the flagship, the lookout on the observation deck paid attention to the situation on the thriller bark through the monocular telescope. Then he noted the new members of the Netherworld Pirates, such as the Douglas Bullet and the others. As he continued to report, the Marine couldn't help but have a change of expression. Damn it. Okayanyu's eyes were focused on the thriller bark. The robot, which was like a giant and full of science fiction atmosphere, continuously fired a large number of laser beams and sank no less than 5 warships in a short period of time. Okayanyu was somewhat shocked and angry. He tightly clenched his fists and said through gritted teeth, "Oh Baskluk, that bastard, actually. Die, you group of scumbags." Meteor volcano. Whoosh. He was furious. His fists had turned into rolling magma, which continuously bombarded the sky. In the blink of an eye, a large number of magma bombs carrying billowing smoke sank into the sky and disappeared. Swish. The piercing sound in the air continued, and the sparks were getting bigger and bigger. Like a large volcanic eruption, countless volcanic bombs continued to fall from the sky. One after another, the hot and terrifying magma bombs, carrying a powerful impact, went straight to the thriller bark. Shadow Torrent. Just then, Luke uses his Shadow Fruit ability. In an instant, endless black shadows gathered from all directions and covered the entire thriller bark tightly, blocking the incoming magma bombs. Boom. 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 Swish. A golden light flashed above Punk Hazard. As a trump card, Kizaru, who was not prepared to attack so quickly, could no longer sit still. In an instant, he had already appeared over Punk Hazard. Looking at the tall robot and the black gun barrels in its hands, constantly condensing dazzling light and releasing laser beams to attack the Buster Call fleet. His expression changed. It's actually a cyborg? No, maybe, to be more precise, it should be a cyborg zombie. He never thought that Hobaskluk would be so desperate and that he would install the laser system on these zombies. In fact, the Marines' scientific forces had already mastered laser technology from Dr. Vegapunk. However, these laser cannons are too expensive compared to ordinary artillery. The high-level officials of the world government are also too stingy. They believe that the Marines' current firepower is sufficient. There is absolutely no intention to mass-produce such laser cannons and equip the Marines. He heard that Dr. Vegapunk had already had such an idea and wanted to install it on the clone army. However, he never found a suitable experimental sample. Unexpectedly, he ran into a guy like Hobaskluk, who didn't play by the rules and installed the laser system directly on the zombie army. These guys have no sense of pain and are not afraid of death. Equipped with such a thing with amazing lethality, they indeed became a bit difficult to deal with. Who is it? It's Admiral Kizaru. He is a Logia Devil Fruit user. Ordinary ammunition and laser cannons are ineffective against him. Use Sea Prism Stone nets. Bang. 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 Kizaru's arrival was quickly discovered. It's not just the transformed zombie version of the pacifista army. There are actually a large number of zombie troops, wielding swords, guns, and cannons, coming out of the hidden caves. They all rushed out while shouting there. The zombies that were close to Kizaru decisively launched an attack. A large number of bullets, a small number of rockets, and even laser beams were fired one after another. But for Kizaru, who was a Logia Devil Fruit user, they were directly ineffective. It penetrated his body, but his whole body was unharmed. Bang. The dazzling light flashed and disappeared. A zombie holding a net gun was just about to fire it but was directly kicked away by Kizaru with a light speed kick. No, these guys are all zombies. Kizaru dodged the attacking Sea Prism Stone net and sighed there. It's really scary. But it's better to get rid of them first. A golden light flashed. He jumped directly into the air, and the dazzling light mirror condensed. Yasukani no Magatama. Swish. A large number of light bullets poured out like an overwhelming force and blasted toward the zombies. Admiral Kizaru? At this moment, a swift red figure rushed over like lightning. Kai. The dark umbrella in his hand swung violently, and a powerful flying slash, carrying armament hockey, blew away the light bullets. Boom. A large number of light bullets were blown away. The ground shattered, and smoke and dust rolled. Patrick Redfield? Kizaru's eyes turned stern as he stared at Redfield, who had become younger, stronger, and no longer old. You, a guy who has always been arrogant and alone, have to succumb to reality and work for a little kid for freedom. Before he finished speaking, a fierce light speed kick had already blasted towards Redfield. Bang. But in the blink of an eye, the umbrella wrapped with Conqueror hockey blocked the attack easily. Hey, whatever you say. Looking directly at Kizaru in front of him, Redfield smiled coldly and playfully, then he said murderously, I still have a score to settle with you Marines, and I have to settle it well. It depends on how much strength you can still have after being locked up for so long in the prison. Kizaru's emitted a dazzling light. Amano Morakamo sword. Clang. Boom. Chapter 230, Weakness Damn It. On the flagship, Seeing that they were completely suppressed by the firepower of the other party, the fleet suffered heavy losses. As the highest commander of this buster call, Sakazuki's face was extremely gloomy and a little aggrieved. Once upon a time, the Marines' buster call was invincible wherever it went, they killed all the enemy. But now, it was the firepower that suppressed them in the end. Enemy attack. What kind of monster is this? Damn, where did they come from? Bang. Clang. Ah. Suddenly, inside the cabin, a series of screams came out. A large number of weird and hideous shadows rushed out from inside. The Marines were completely caught off guard and rushed to fight back, but people continued to fall into a pool of blood. What? Okainu's expression changed drastically, and he was shocked and angry. His whole body was full of murderous aura as he rushed forward. Boom. A hideous shadow that was unable to dodge was directly pierced by the magma fist. Kai. However, what Okainu couldn't believe was, this strange shadow was still alive, the extremely sharp claws, like a blade, swung over fiercely and continued to attack him. ZZ. A large amount of lava splashed. Okainu, who was unharmed, had his eyes narrowed. Are these guys immortal? Bang. He stepped forward and kicked out with a flying kick. The Shadowkin was blown away and crashed through the thick cabin. He frowned while looking at the shadow monsters that kept rushing out from the cabin and even at every corner of the warship to attack those Marines. What the hell is this? Swish. But suddenly, his hair stood up, and then he suddenly retreated violently and dodged subconsciously. Kai. Without any warning, sharp shadow tentacles, wrapped with powerful armament haki, danced like vines and penetrated forward, but Okainu narrowly avoided it. As expected of the admiral from the Marine headquarters. The reaction is quite fast. In the shadow of the cabin, a tall figure appeared there. Okainu and the surrounding Marines' pupils couldn't help but shrink. Obaskluk? No one expected Obaskluk, who was far away on the thriller bark, to suddenly appear on the warship. You. Okainu's face was gloomy, and his eyes were staring at Luke in front of him with murderous intent. I haven't attacked you yet, but you actually came to my door. We meet again, Admiral Okainu. Looking at Sakazuki in front of him, Luke smiled and spoke. When he was in CP9, he had seen him in Anai's lobby. At that time, Okainu was riding a warship, passing through the gates of justice and returning to the Marine headquarters. Humphrey, if a person does not follow the right path, he is worthless. Sakazuki's eyes were cold. He locked onto Luke in front of him and said coldly, Today, let me personally deal with you, a traitor. At this moment, the temperature around Okainu became hot, and thick smoke billowed around him. He completely ignored the deck under his feet, which was blackened at a speed visible to the naked eye due to the high temperature. It seemed that it was about to burn. It's unfortunate. Aokiji said something similar, and Garp also said it. Luke's mouth corners were raised, full of arrogance. If you can do it, just try it. Swish. In an instant, several magma fists directly bombard Luke, but he does not dodge or evade it at all. He let the hot magma fists pierce through his body. Boom. The cabin was directly blasted through by the magma fist, and a raging fire ignited. Huh? This surprising scene made Sakazuki's eyes shrink. Without hesitation, he rushed up directly. His magma-like right fist carried a powerful armament haki. Like a volcanic eruption, it pierced Luke's head like a cannonball. Hound Crimson Lotus. Hey! Luke laughed grimly, and then he swung his fist without showing any weakness. Black and red lightning intertwined around his fist as it collided fiercely with the punch carrying the terrible high temperature of the magma. Bang! There was a loud explosion. The thick deck collapsed and cracked. Whoosh! The amazing heat wave swept across, and the whole warship shook violently. A large amount of magma kept splashing, and the surrounding Marines were directly blown away by the shock wave. Some people were directly splashed by the magma on their bodies, making them scream non-stop. Crack! For a moment, the warship burned fiercely, creating a thick smoke. Ah! The warship is on fire. Admiral Okainu, please restrain yourself. Damn, these monsters, they can't be killed at all. The Marines who were fighting with those shadow monsters screamed there. There were also many people who jumped directly into the sea because the fire was getting bigger and couldn't be put out. In fact, it was not just this warship. Similar scenes were happening on other warships in all directions. A large number of Shadowkin rushed out continuously from the shadows in every corner, attacking those who were completely unprepared and only focused on defending from the incoming attack at the front. They were caught off guard and suffered heavy losses. What on earth are these monsters? On a large warship in the distance, the cold air was surging, and Okiji directly froze the shadow monsters that suddenly rushed out from all corners. His eyes were a little doubtful. Is it the devil fruit ability of Obaskluk? Boom. But a steady stream of shadow monsters rushed out, They directly smashed the ice sculptures and even completely ignored whether they would hurt the frozen shadow monsters inside. They relentlessly attack Aokiji and the surrounding marines. I heard that zombies are afraid of salt. Let's give it a try. The extremely sharp ice knife directly split a Shadowkin in half. Aokiji took out a handful of salt directly from his pocket. In order to target the ability of the shadow fruit, the marines had already prepared a large amount of sea salt. Each marine was given some salt in advance. He, the admiral from the marine headquarters, was no exception. Swish. He quickly grabbed the salt and stuffed it into the shadow monster that was split in two and was continuously healing at a speed visible to the naked eye like a black fluid. Ah! The next moment, the shadow monster screamed, and then it shrank directly at a speed visible to the naked eye. Aokiji's eyes were stern. Is it really killed? Swish. Then, he threw a handful of salt, but it had no effect on the shadow monster's body. Will it be ineffective if it is sprinkled directly on the body surface? Aokiji swept his right foot. He kicked a shadow monster that rushed up. Swish. Then Aokiji quickly sprinkles a handful of salt on a cut-off black claw. The shadow monster whose claws were cut off suddenly screamed. Ah! The claw seemed to be purified, with visible light smoke, and it turned into a small shadow floating there. Then, it sank into the body of the shadow monster. But the broken claw could not be restored infinitely like before. These monsters are afraid of sea salt, and seawater may also be able to restrain them. Aokiji did not hesitate. He loudly reminded the marines, who were panicked because they saw that these monsters could not be killed at all, force them into the sea, or put salt in their mouths or wounds. Notify all warships immediately and tell them the weaknesses of these monsters. Yes, Admiral Aokiji. Chapter 231, Akainu vs. Luke. Everyone, pay attention. These monsters are restrained by seawater and salt. Force them into the sea, or stuff salt into their mouths and sprinkle it on their wounds. So that's how it is. Fortunately, we prepared a lot of salt. Damn monsters. Go to hell. Bang. Clang. Ah. At the warships, the shouts and screams shook the sky, and the fighting continued. As Aokiji discovered the weaknesses of these shadow monsters. Through the Den Mushi, all the warships were notified in an instant. On the warships that were in chaos due to the Shadowkin army that kept rushing out, the marines, who were retreating step by step and suffered heavy losses, excitedly launched a counterattack. From time to time, Shadowkins were torn apart, and then their wounds were sprinkled with salt. As expected, after the wounds of these shadow monsters were sprinkled with sea salt, they could no longer be connected. Moreover, if it is a fatal wound, it will shrink directly like a deflated balloon. It will turn into a shadow and disappear. Great. It really works. These guys can't recover. Damn monsters, force them into the sea. Everyone, kill them. For a while, the morale of the Marines was greatly boosted. The Shadowkin army suffered heavy casualties and were constantly killed, turned into shadows, and disappeared. However, facing the fearless and powerful Shadowkin army, even after knowing that seawater and salt can restrain the weakness of these shadow monsters, the Marines still continued to fall in a pool of blood. The loss was huge. Bang. Clang. Crack. On the blazing warship, the surviving Marines had already jumped into the sea. Only a few were still entangled and fighting with those shadow monsters. Bang. Accompanied by waves of terrible heat waves. One black and one red, two tall figures fiercely confronted each other, with neither side giving in to the other. Swish. Akainu retreated violently. He dodged the shadow vines that rushed out from Luke's body, wrapped around by armament haki, and attacked like a violent sphere. He stared at the strange figure with shadows surging in front of him. His eyes were stern. The ability of the shadow fruit has been developed to this extent. He has basically confirmed it. Luke should be the devil fruit user of the shadow fruit. But what is really frightening is that the other party has developed the ability of the shadow fruit to such an exaggerated degree. Compared with the former Gecko Moria, it is completely not on the same level. Boom. At this time, he kicked away several ferocious Shadowkins who attacked fearlessly without hesitation. Akainu rushed out quickly, and his magma-like fist hit Luke fiercely. These monsters were all created by your devil fruit ability, right? This gift is not bad, right? Luke smiled lightly. Not to be outdone, he punched directly back. Bang. The magma splashed. The two collided hard. On the sea, the waves were surging. The powerful shock waves, carrying rolling heat waves, swept across. On the already dilapidated warship, the deck kept shaking there. Don't be too proud. In order to restrain your zombies, the Marines have already prepared a lot of salt. Akainu's figure turned into after images as he blasted over madly. Bang. 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 Luke was also unwilling to be outdone. His fists were intertwined with black and red lightning, and he swung them continuously. He fought a fierce confrontation with Akainu there. Really? Then you have to work hard. Looking at the gloomy Akainu, Luke showed a willful smile, full of playfulness. Seawater or salt can indeed restrain the infinite recovery ability of Shadowkins and even kill them. However, he had already transferred the cards containing the bodies of those Shadowkin to Capone and let him stand by in the Shadow Realm. After the Shadowkin died, the shadow that was out of the control of the Shadow Fruit would directly enter the Shadow Realm through the shadow and try to return to the owner. But all the shadows will be captured again. As long as he wants, he can generate Shadowkins continuously without even consuming much physical strength. Therefore, before killing him or exhausting his physical strength, the Shadowkin army is endless. Don't be so arrogant, kid. Akainu retreated violently. His whole body was murderous, and his eyes were extremely fierce. But his heart couldn't help but sink because the loss of the Marines was really too great. Before the real full-scale confrontation with the Netherworld pirates, more than half of the troops had been lost. A large amount of magma kept gushing out, and his arm filled with magma kept expanding. In the final analysis, as long as you, the Devil Fruit user, are killed, those monsters will disappear completely. Great eruption. The huge magma fist directly dyed the entire sea surface red and scorched the atmosphere. It was as if a long-dormant underwater volcano had really erupted, mercilessly bombarding Luke in front of him and was going to burn him to ashes. Hey, the same thing. If you can do it, just try it. Luke had a grim smile on his face. He put his fists together, then his veins popped out, and his muscles kept moving rhythmically. The extremely powerful armament hockey kept flowing, directly distorting the atmosphere. 6 powers extreme, 6 king gun. Boom. In an instant, the incomparable fluctuations turned into a huge shock wave. Then, without showing weakness, the two attacks collided fiercely. Boom. The light was dazzling. The terrifying magma kept gushing out, and the shock waves, like a prehistoric beast, kept colliding violently and squeezing each other without giving in. Rumble. Boom. The sea was surging, and the waves were rolling. The terrible shock waves kept sweeping and raging. The warships, which were already covered with fire, were completely torn apart and disintegrated. Chapter 232, Defeat you one by one. Help. Damn, these monsters. Bang. Ah. On the sea, the waves were surging, and the wind was raging. A large number of surviving Marines struggled in the sea, trying to grab floating objects as much as possible. But what made them desperate was that a large number of Shadowkins spread their devil-like wings and flew in the air and kept attacking them. Obask Luke. Akainu roared there unwillingly as he flew backward like a cannonball and blasted straight into the sea. Boom. Then, a huge splash exploded on the sea. Admiral Akainu. The surviving Marine shouted. There were also Marines on other warships who couldn't help but stare with wide eyes and shout. No one could believe that Admiral Akainu, who represented the highest combat power from the Marine headquarters, was actually at a disadvantage, and Obask Luke blasted him into the sea. What? On a large warship located several kilometers away, seeing this scene, Aokiji's expression changed. Sakazuki. He never thought that Akainu would be defeated by the other party. Swish. Aokiji jumped into the sea, and the terrifying freezing air surged as he pressed his hand directly into the sea, releasing freezing air continuously. Ice Age. Crack. The sea in front of him froze at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, the area where Akainu fell was completely frozen. But the sea behind where the warships were located was not frozen. Obviously, Aokiji was very rational and kept a retreat path for his side out of caution. He just froze the sea area in front to provide a foothold for those Marines who fell into the water. In particular, among these strong men, the only one who truly possesses the ability to fly is Kizaru, but he can't hold out for long with just a moon step. Hey, you want to freeze the sea? You can't save him. At this time, Luke was full of murderous intent. He locked Akainu's figure in the sea. Without hesitation, his legs kicked out violently like lightning. Tempest kick. Swish. In the blink of an eye, one wind blade after another appeared out of thin air, carrying a strong armament hockey as it easily tore the atmosphere apart and continuously blasted into the ice in front. It seemed that it would not stop until it killed the opponent directly. Boom. The thick ice layer was directly cut open like rotten wood. A large amount of broken ice, accompanied by a strong shock wave, kept splashing. Meteor volcano. Then, the raging magma melted the ice, and Akainu's embarrassed figure rushed out of the ice. Swish. One after another, magma bombs madly bombarded Luke in front as Akainu launched a sharp and fierce counterattack. Bang. However, without any sign, Luke's tall figure disappeared in the air in an instant, making Akainu's attack directly miss. Swish. The next moment, Luke seemed to teleport, and he instantly appeared behind Akainu. There was no other reason. After the surging sea was frozen, the entire ice surface appeared uneven, with countless shadows. A large number of shadow strings that were almost invisible to the naked eye were connected to every corner at all times, allowing him to teleport completely. For Luke, it was the best battlefield. He could rely on the existence of the Shadow Realm to shuttle directly in those shadows. In an instant, a piercing sound sounded in the air. His right foot, wrapped in the armament Haki, intertwined with black and red lightning, suddenly crushed the atmosphere as it swept across mercilessly. Bang! Okaenu's expression changed drastically, and his hair stood up. He didn't even think about it for a moment. He turned around, crossed his arms, and barely blocked the kick. Boom! Along with the rolling heat waves, a large amount of magma splashed, making the ice surface around make a sizzling sound as they melted. Damn it! The powerful kick made no direct contact with his magma arms, but the terrifying power made Okaenu, who was caught off guard and tried to block it, face turn red. This power! Bang! His eyes were wide open, and the veins in his arms were bulging. This situation seemed to be extremely strenuous for him. He was directly knocked back by the exaggerated power. The ice surface was cracked and collapsed. It was hard to get rid of the power. Then, he barely stabilized his body and clenched his fists tightly. Okaenu stared at Luke in front of him, full of anger and murderous intent. Asshole, don't be so arrogant. Not to be outdone, he rushed forward like lightning. His magma-like punch distorted the atmosphere as it blasted towards Luke fiercely. Hound Crimson Lotus. Shadow Revolution, Partial Enlargement Giant Pistol. Luke's eyes were stern, then he clenched his right fist tightly, and it suddenly expanded. It was as shiny black as a giant's fist, intertwined with black and red lightning, and entangled with a strong conqueror Haki. He showed no weakness and punched out. Boom! There was a loud explosion. That huge, indestructible fist was like cast iron. It instantly collided with the extremely hot magma punch that could burn through everything. Boom! The shock waves rolled, and the ice surface cracked. Countless broken eyes swept there, making it difficult for people to see the scenes. Gurgle. A large amount of magma kept flowing down, directly melting the ice layer and boiling the seawater. Okaenu, I have to thank you. Luke smiled, looked directly at Okaenu in front of him, and said sarcastically, your Marines is afraid that we will use the power of the float fruit to drop more islands from the sky, causing too much loss to the fleet. So you deliberately disperse the fleet and keep a sufficient distance from each other. But this makes it easier for us to defeat you one by one. Originally, this formation can be said to be the best solution. But these high-ranking Marines officials never expected that Luke's Pansha Shadow Fruit ability would be so exaggerated after awakening. Using the plundered shadows, he created a Shadowkin army that is different from the zombie army, and they can actually pass through the Shadow Realm to suppress the Marines everywhere. Even these Shadowkin can inherit the Devil Fruit ability of the original body. For example, Caponebridge can use the power of the Castle Fruit to shuttle the members of the Netherworld Pirates, making it hard for them to guard against. What? Hearing this, Okaenu's heart jumped. A strong sense of uneasiness surged in his heart, and then he subconsciously looked at other warships, and his pupils shrank sharply. As expected, there were continuous shouts and screams from the distant sea. In addition to those shadow monsters that appeared inexplicably on the warships, there seemed to be other figures who also appeared on these warships, fighting with the Marines, making the situation more precarious. Damn it, what's going on? This scene shocked and angered him. He couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart, and his face turned ashen as he glared at Luke. You. Chapter 233, Aokiji vs. Bullet Bang. Clang. Damn, where did these guys come from? Completely different from those shadow monsters just now. Is this the zombie army of the Netherworld Pirates? Damn pirates, fight them. At this moment, shouts, gunshots, and screams continue to echo in this sea area. At the ships scattered on the sea, far apart from each other, in addition to Shadowkins that keep popping out from every shadow, there are actually a large number of zombies and even members of the Netherworld Pirates that suddenly appeared. Now, on the deck, the Marines were once again caught off guard and suffered heavy losses. They were at an absolute disadvantage, and people kept falling into a pool of blood. Clang. Sparks flew as blades collided, and the strong wind swept over suddenly. The Marines, Shadowkins, and zombies who were fighting around were all blown away. Damn it. Momozegi tightly grasped her sword, Konpira, with her hands and once again collided with Golden Lion, who suddenly appeared in the warships. Looking at the familiar yet strange figure in front of her, her pupils shrank sharply, and she was somewhat shocked. Although she had heard that the legendary Golden Lion might have been turned into a zombie by Obask Luke, she was still shocked when he actually saw it. Dragon Slash. Suddenly, the fierce flying slash transformed into a dragon with bared fangs and claws as it flew toward her. What? Momozagi's hair stood up. Without thinking, she retreated like lightning and narrowly dodged the sudden attack. The extremely sharp dragon slash directly cut off the mast, and even the cabin was cut in half. Boom. Countless Marines broke out in cold sweat. Looking at the blade in the hand of the person who came, her eyes narrowed. Black knife, Shushui. Boom. At the same time, on another warship not far away, accompanied by dazzling light, the entire warship suddenly exploded. Flames were blazing, and thick smoke was billowing. Ah! Countless Marines screamed there and were thrown out by the terrible shock waves. Only a few Marines stepped into the sky with the moon hiding formation. The vast majority of the Marines fell directly into the sea and swam desperately towards the ice not far away. Damn it! Tokakake has a sullen expression as he uses Moon Step to stay in the air, and he glares at the tall figure in front of him who is also floating in the air, World Destroyer Burndai World. You are the so-called Admiral candidate, right? Burndai World stepped into the air while carrying a laser cannon in his hand, then he pointed it at Tokakake in front of him and said with a grin, "Bear my anger for more than 20 years, Marines." Without waiting for Tokakake to respond, the dark laser cannon emitted a dazzling light as he pulled the trigger mercilessly, more tenfold laser cannon. Swish. A stunning laser beam shot out, and in the blink of an eye, it continued to expand and enlarge, directly turning into a fist-sized laser beam. With lightning speed, it bombarded Tokakake. Boom. Tokakake's whole body exploded directly, and a large amount of rubble splashed in all directions. Bang. A head that was shattered into pieces was blown away and rolled onto the ice in front. But there was no bloody scene as imagined. Ka. In Burndai World's astonished eyes, a large amount of rocks kept coming out and condensed into a human shape at a speed visible to the naked eye. Tokakake's figure appeared there again, with his whole body unharmed. Aardvark machine gun. Tokakake's eyes were stern. His right hand turned directly into the shape of a machine gun. Swish. A large number of stone bullets, wrapped in armament hockey, shot out continuously at Burndai World in the air. Hey, a Logia devil fruit user? Burndai World grinned, then he stomped his feet hard, more tenfold speed. With astonishing speed, he turned into a shadow and dodged the stone bullet that attacked him, then, he put the laser cannon on his back, pulled out the revolver from his waist, and pulled the trigger continuously. More tenfold gun. The piercing sound whistled in the air as the bullets wrapped with armament hockey flew. Swish. It was like cannonballs, so fast that it was out of reach as they blasted towards Tokakake like lightning. Boom. Not just here. In the distance, a huge ice wall suddenly appeared on the sea, blocking the bursts of laser beams. But it exploded directly, and a large area was vaporized by the terrible high temperature and collapsed. Boom. At this time, a huge figure rushed directly from the direction of the thriller bark at an astonishing speed with his powerful observation hockey locked onto Aokiji. Demon air, Douglas bullet. Aokiji exhaled a breath of cold air. He didn't care about the Marines who were fighting with the Shadokans. Looking directly at the robot, which was like a giant and full of murderous intent, as it rushed over, he jumped directly on the ice. What a scary guy. Admiral Aokiji. With the power of the Parimsha clank fruit, Douglas Bullet controlled the robot that was perfectly combined with himself while grinning, "Come on. Fight." Bang. The ice surface rumbled and trembled, his feet suddenly accelerated, and he turned into an afterimage. He directly crossed a distance of dozens or hundreds of meters and arrived in front of Aokiji. Huh. The atmosphere was directly crushed. An alloy iron fist wrapped in armament hockey, shining with a metallic luster, slammed into Aokiji. Boom. Instantly, a loud explosion shook the sky. The huge and extremely thick ice wall was directly destroyed mercilessly. Ice ball. Aokiji jumped high, and his hands suddenly released several large ice pillars, flooding the steel giant in front of him. He wanted to freeze it directly. Swish. However, Douglas Bullet, who had merged with the robot, showed an exaggerated speed that was completely inconsistent with his body size and instantly flashed past Aokiji. Moreover, the huge figure was so fast that it swept Aokiji's right side like a shadow. A fierce punch wrapped in armament hockey directly tore the air. What? Aokiji was surprised, and his pupils suddenly dilated. Boom. There was no surprise, Aokiji was blasted into pieces and turned into broken ice. Ice time capsule. But at this moment, the terrifying cold air surged and directly froze the legs of the steel giant, who had no time to dodge. Crack. The terrible cold air continued to spread to the upper body of the steel giant, making it unable to move. Doppelganger. Douglas Bullet's expression changed drastically. He stared at Aokiji in shock. What he had just blasted was obviously just the opponent's clone. "I'm sorry, a dangerous guy like you should die here." Aokiji rushed over and pressed one hand on the robot's shoulder, and the amazing cold air kept spreading. It was obvious that he wanted to completely freeze the entire robot, including Douglas Bullet inside. Hey, you're happy too soon. Douglas Bullet laughed loudly there. If it was an ordinary robot he had synthesized before, it might have been frozen. However, the gift sent by Luke was quite extraordinary. Incineration Cannon. Whoosh! Without any warning, a black mass of cannon barrels suddenly gushed out with a strong flame that flooded Aokiji. What? Boom. Chapter 234, Massacre Swish. Quick, get out of the way. Rear Admiral Jason, you. Ah. Damn, what's going on? My body is out of control. Clang. Bang. Ah. On a large warship, shadow strings, almost invisible to the naked eye, flew out from every blind spot like lightning and landed in the shadows of the unsuspecting Marines. The next second, the bodies of the Marines were totally out of control, and they killed each other there. Even the high-ranking Marine officers were no exception. No matter how hard they struggled, they could not resist. Swords were waving, gunshots were heard, and people kept falling in a pool of blood. Some were even cut in half by the extremely sharp shadow. It only took a moment, and the nearly 1,000 elite Marines on a large warship were all slaughtered. Next one. The dark figure instantly disappeared from the warship and directly appeared on another warship. Swish. A large number of shadow strings once again flew out, and some experienced Marines noticed something was wrong and dodged it in advance. But they still couldn't escape. Because these Marines didn't know it at all. Those shadow strings never targeted their bodies but their shadows. Some shadow strings also penetrated the deck directly and instantly controlled these Marines. My body is out of control. Damn it, get out of the way. No, Captain Took. Ah. Countless Marines screamed while fighting each other uncontrollably there, making a bloody and cruel scene appear again. Bang. The hot and boiling magma punch collided fiercely with the fist that flashed with a trace of electric light and was entangled with armament hockey. The amazing heat wave rolled over. Damn it, could it be? Hearing the screams from the warship in the distance. Okainu noticed something unusual and glanced at it subconsciously. Seeing those Marines killing each other, his pupils shrank sharply, and his face turned pale. Moreover, he vaguely saw a figure that was almost exactly the same as Luke in front of him, flashing there and disappearing. What on earth did you do? He stared at Luke in front of him with glazing eyes. He had heard Kizaru mention it very carefully. The other party also had a clone that was almost the same in strength as the original body and even had the same ability. But until now, Luke had not summoned it at all. It was obviously sent out to hunt those Marines. Guess. Luke looked calm and full of amusement. Why did he deliberately release the three monsters, Patrick Redfield, Douglas Bullet, and Burndye World, who were originally imprisoned in the Eternal Hell and were so powerful that they would never be willing to be inferior to others? He even gave Redfield the mythical Zone Devil Fruit for nothing and directly gave a large number of memory alloys, as well as laser weapons and incineration cannons, which were new weapons developed by Germa 66, to Douglas Bullet, who had the ability of the Clank Fruit, so that his combat power could be greatly increased. Letting this arrogant Red the Aloof, who has always been alone and unwilling to ally with anyone, and the Demon Heir, who is rebellious and brutal and pursues one person's strength, take action. The purpose is to completely defeat the entire Buster Call fleet. He wants to hit the Marines so hard that it cannot really recover in the next few years and cut off an arm of the world government. Winning time and space for the development of the Netherworld pirates in the future. Asshole. Okainu was furious. With a heart full of anger and murderous intent, he rushed forward without giving up. Ho! Ho! The magma-like fists carried a powerful armament hockey. The atmosphere was distorted by the burning, and they were waving wildly. It's a pity that you can't stop it. Fire King Snake. Luke laughed, his fists burned with blazing flames as they rubbed the atmosphere violently. The sky was full of the afterimage of a fist carrying blazing flames as it bombarded forward. Boom. The loud explosion and the heat waves rolled. The terrifying magma and flames kept splashing. The ice surface around was constantly melting, turning into boiling seawater, and the hot air was steaming. Accept your fate, Akainu. What awaits you is only defeat, there is no other way. The battlefield of the two people kept moving forward. Luke was full of strength and attacked head-on directly. The violent punch, burning with blazing flames, was like rubber and could be stretched or shrunk. Ho! Ho! It turned into endless afterimages, constantly turning there. From all blind spots, it bombarded like an overwhelming force, leaving the opponent no way to avoid it. Fire King Snake. Don't underestimate the Marines, Hellhound. Okainu was not willing to be outdone. He was extremely angry, and his face was hideous, like a mad dog. The magma-like fists, like a long dormant volcano that kept erupting, blasted out crazily. Bang. Boom. ZZ. The atmosphere was distorted by the heat wave. It turned into ripples visible to the naked eye, and it kept raging there. At this time, a red figure flew out like a cannonball. Caught off guard, Akainu was blown away by the turning fist, and his whole body was embedded in the ice. Tempest kick victory bird. Luke jumped high. His observation hockey locked onto Akainu's figure. His eyes were cold and murderous, and he kicked out with his right leg covered with armament hockey. A dazzling flying slash broke through the air, and it turned into a giant bird that swooped down. Hound Crimson Lotus. Roar. In a flash, a scalding heat wave dyed the ice red. A giant magma dog rushed out directly, carrying a high temperature. Boom. Ziz. The loud explosion shook the sky. A large amount of magma kept splashing. At the same time, waves of hot breath kept melting the ice. Damn, little brat. In an instant, an embarrassed figure rushed out. There was blood on the corner of his mouth, and hot magma flowed all over his body, full of hideousness. He was extremely ferocious and stared at Luke in front of him fiercely. What a tough guy. At this moment, Luke's whole body was shining with vast electric light. The arcs that kept erupting in his body constantly stimulated his own nerve cells. It greatly increased and strengthened his speed, strength, and reaction ability in all directions. Swish. The figure was as fast as lightning. The next moment, he appeared right above Akainu, with his right foot trapped in armament hockey, and like a sharp axe, he slammed his foot down. Seeing this, Akainu retreated directly and didn't resist head no, dodging it narrowly. Boom. The ice surface within hundreds of meters in radius instantly cracked like a spider web. Swish. Luke was aggressive. He chased relentlessly, not giving the other party a chance to breathe. The blazing fists were intertwined with strong electric light, carrying a strong armament hockey. Ho! Ho! The fists all over the sky poured down like a storm. During this time, he laughed loudly, full of arrogance. Akainu, you mad dog. Come on, continue. Please me to your heart's content. Meteor volcano. In response to Luke, there were magma bombs that carried high temperatures and burned through everything. Boom. Chapter 235, Robluchi and Sharingan. Damn monsters, there's no end to them. Damn pirates, fight them. For justice, let's go. Ah. A large battleship was filled with shouts of killing. A large number of marines fought fearlessly with those shadowkins and zombies. And on the bow not far away, two figures with amazing momentum were fighting fiercely there. Clang. Sparks were flying, and the sound of metal clashing continued. At this moment, Robluchi has horns on his head and a hideous face. At this moment, his body was covered with dragon scales, and behind him was a long dragon tail. He had already entered the human beast form, covered his claws with armament hockey, and constantly collided with a vice admiral with a mustache. King. The blade chopped out fiercely, and Robluchi blocked it with his claws. While staring at the hideous monster in front of him, Vice Admiral Momonga, who was struggling, said sternly, "Are you invulnerable to the sword?" Vice Admiral Momonga, it's been a long time since we last met. In human beast form, Lucci, who looked scary, looked directly at Momonga in front of him, showing a grim smile. He greeted the other party, but his action with his hand was completely merciless. Finger pistol, spots. The extremely sharp claws kept tearing the atmosphere like dense bullets. They madly bombarded Momonga. "Robluchi, I didn't expect a guy like you to betray the world government," Vice Admiral Momonga said in a deep voice. "This is the arrangement of fate, but I am very satisfied with my current life." Lucci grinned and laughed. He had no regrets about his decision but was full of gratitude. Otherwise, he would stay in the world government. Except for being a dog for the world government, he would not get any benefits. It doesn't matter who he is a dog for, at least in the Netherworld Pirates, he can not only gain powerful strength but also maintain his integrity. He doesn't have to be manipulated by those useless trash who rely on the protection of their superior and humbly be an undercover agent and waste his youth. At least, he is 100% convinced of Luke, a monster that cannot be guessed by common sense. "Really? That's a pity." Momonga kept dodging the attack, and then he said in a cold voice, "It's a pity that your life will end here." The next moment, he launched a counterattack. He rushed out with the blade wrapped with armament hockey and swung the sword fiercely at Lucci in front of him. Instant transmission. Lucci stepped hard and dodged the attack swiftly. In an instant, he appeared in the air. His right foot was like lightning, and it slashed down fiercely. Tempest kick. The powerful wind blade came violently. Seeing this, Momonga's expression changed, and he tried to block it with his sword. King. The sound of metal clashing was deafening. The terrifying, blazing wind blade was powerful and heavy. Momonga's veins popped up directly, and he kept retreating. Damn. What kind of power is this? Momonga's muscles were tense. and his face flushed. He was shocked and felt that his knees were about to be bent and his knuckles were about to be torn apart. Up. Finally, he gritted his teeth, tried his best, and lifted the sword fiercely. The powerful wind blade deviated from its trajectory. Bang! The power did not decrease and blasted into the distance. It exploded on the thick ice, leaving a shocking huge mark. Bang! However, before Momonga could catch his breath, Lucci had already rushed over, and a huge dragon tail suddenly slashed over. Tempest kick, dragon tail. Swish! The atmosphere was directly torn apart. An extremely sharp rotating wind blade flew over. Instant transmission. Momonga stepped hard and violently, barely avoiding the attack. Boom! There was a loud explosion, and debris flew. The bow was directly torn and pierced by the sharp wind blade, and the surging seawater kept pouring in. What? Momonga used Moon Step to stay in the air, but Rob Lucci had already rushed out and chased him relentlessly. Clang! The sword and the claws collided fiercely. But suddenly, the pink dragon's tail suddenly stretched out like a venomous snake and rolled up suddenly. Swish! It was extremely fast and directly trapped Momonga, who was a little careless and had no time to dodge. What? Momonga's expression changed drastically. He struggled hard, but the dragon's tail became tighter, and he couldn't get rid of it at all. You are careless, Vice Admiral Momonga. Lucci was grinning there. Relying on the life return, he controlled the dragon's tail and tightly entangled Momonga. Damn! The sword entangled with armament hockey slashed at the dragon's tail fiercely. However, it only made the sound of metal clashing together, but it couldn't shake it. Ultimate radius, Lucci was murderous. His fists, covered with scales and sharp claws, turned black, and they were put together. The vast armament hockey was entwined and spread air. Buzz! The invisible wave directly distorted the atmosphere. It turned into a violent shockwave and hit Momonga, whose expression changed greatly. 6 King Gun. Armament hockey, iron body. Boom. Ah! Slicing wave. On another large warship in the distance, a dazzling flying slash came from the distance. It seemed that it would not stop until the warship was split in half. The Marines who were fighting with the Shadowkins and zombies have their expressions changed into horror. King. In a flash, a tall figure rushed out violently and barely stopped the blazing flying slash. Damn. Vice Admiral Onigamo raised his arms vigorously, and the dazzling flying slash rolled directly into the sky. Hey, isn't his Vice Admiral Onigamo? Long time no see. Sure you, who came from the air, greeted Onigamo in high spirits. Sure you damn traitor. Vice Admiral Onigamo's eyes were gloomy. He stepped directly into the atmosphere and rushed up violently. Except for his hands, his hair seemed to have a life consciousness and kept extending, turning into tentacles, manipulating 6 blades. He kept waving there and slashed at Shiryu, Spider Demon Slash. Clang. The blades kept colliding. Shiryu bit a cigar and seemed calm. The sword in his hand, Ryu, kept blocking the incoming blades, and he seemed to be at ease. Dragon Slash. Ryu cut through the air, and as he swung it fiercely. Swish. The blazing and unparalleled slash directly turned into a lifelike dragon. It bared its fangs and charged towards Onigamo fiercely. Clang. The 8 blades crossed and barely blocked. But Onigamo was still knocked back by the terrible force. He fell on the ice behind in a somewhat embarrassed manner. Lion's threat, Imperial Earthbind. Swoosh. The corners of Shiryu's mouth rose, and then he directly hooked his index finger. Boom. Without any warning, the ice surface suddenly rumbled and trembled as it slowly floated up. As if it had a life consciousness, it turned into a vortex, circling violently there. Roar. In the blink of an eye, a huge, ferocious, and majestic ice lion, like a mountain, was formed. It opened its bloody mouth and rushed towards the unprepared Vice Admiral Onigamo. What? Onigamo was horrified. In a hurry, he retreated without hesitation. At the same time, he swung out his sword, trying his best to resist. He tried to stop the relentless pursuit of the fierce ice lion. Boom. There was a rumble on the ice. A large amount of broken ice splashed there. The huge ice lion was directly torn and destroyed by one flying slash after another. Hey, that's it, Vice Admiral Onigamo. But at the same time, while floating in the air, Shiryu, who had been ready to go, laughed grimly and attacked directly. His observation hockey firmly locked onto Onigamo, who had not yet had time to breathe a sigh of relief. The cold and terrifying blade slashed down brazenly, not giving the opponent any breathing time at all. Rainfall. Whoosh. The piercing sound continues to echo in the air. One flying slash after another, like dense raindrops continuously, penetrated down and directly drowned Onigamo, who had no time to dodge. Boom. Ah. Chapter 236, One-Sided Massacre. Woo. On the sea, no one noticed. A huge pterosaur flapped its wings and soared, circling back and forth in the sky. On its back, a figure sat there. But both the pterosaur and the tall and thin figure were transparent at this moment, and their whereabouts could not be detected by the naked eye. It was Van Augur, the sniper of the Netherworld pirates, who was hiding in the sky with the power of the clear fruit, constantly moving, hunting marines. The high-power sniper scope on his right eye locked the target while Van Augur held his beloved gun, Senroku, which had been modified by the scientific team and greatly enhanced in terms of shooting speed, accuracy, and even range. Then he aimed at a rear admiral from the Marine headquarters on a distant warship and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Swish. 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 On a large warship in the distance, several invisible bullets came through the air like lightning and instantly penetrated the head of the rear admiral from the Marine headquarters. Rear Admiral Ross. Damn, is it a sniper? Everyone pay attention. This horrifying scene made the surrounding Marines panicked. But after looking in all directions, they could not find where the sniper was hiding. However, they could not care so much. As time went on, their casualties became more and more serious. Even though the Marines specially prepared enough salt to deal with the Netherworld pirates, they knew the weaknesses of the zombies and those monsters like shadows. But these zombies and shadow monsters did not stand still and let themselves be slaughtered. Instead, they were fearlessly charging and attacking them fiercely. And a considerable part of them were powerful. Facing the Shadowkin army, which seemed endless and continued to rush out from every corner, as well as the zombie army, these Marines could no longer resist. There were already many warships where the Marines' camp fell behind and even began to fall. In general, the situation of the Marines is already precarious. Bang. Clang. The sound of fighting continued, and the Marines continued to fall into a pool of blood. There were also Shadowkins or zombies who were purified with salt, and their shadows were detached. Instant transmission. Damn pirates, go to hell. A rear admiral from the Marine headquarters stomped his feet and rushed to Law at an extremely fast speed, and then he swung his sword down. Bang. Sparks splashed as Law blocked the slash with his sword, then he retreated, not continuing to fight hard. Room. With his left hand palm facing down, he opened a barrier visible to the naked eye. The next moment, without waiting for the opponent to rush up, he slashes down with his sword. Amputation. What? The rear admiral's face changed color in horror as he saw his whole body had been cut in half, then, his upper half of the body lost balance, and he fell directly. Seeing this, Nojiko threw a handful of seeds directly, flourish. Swish. A large number of plant seeds began to take root and sprout. They grew wildly there at an incredible speed. In the blink of an eye, they turned into huge vines and directly entangled the rear admiral. Ah! Then, a large number of zombies and Shadowkins, without giving the rear admiral a chance for breath, rushed up to finish off the enemy, cutting the rear admiral into pieces. The scene was bloody. Thunderstorm. On the other side, Nami floated in the air, her body extremely flexible. She continuously released vast clouds, and a large number of thunderclouds gathered, interweaving with lightning. Then she pointed at the group of Marines. Bang. Crackle. Ah. On another large warship several miles away. It was also a one-sided massacre that was even more exaggerated where Nami and others were. Horo, negative hollow. Perona floated there with a flower umbrella. Countless ghosts were released from her palms and rushed directly at an astonishing speed to the Marines who were fighting with Shadowkins and zombies. At this moment, the Marines couldn't dodge easily, and those who were passed through by the negative hollow lost the will to resist and became extremely negative. They knelt there one by one. I'm sorry for being born as a human. I'd rather be a flea. I don't deserve to live. If there is an afterlife, I'd rather be a dung beetle. All kinds of extremely shameful words come out from the mouths of those Marines who knelt on the ground and lost their will. But soon, they were ruthlessly finished off by the Shadowkin army and the zombie army. They screamed and fell into a pool of blood one after another, making people shudder. Damn, you! Rear Admiral Keisha glared at Perona and rushed up with the moon steps. However, in his shocked eyes, his sword, covered with armament hockey, went straight through the other party's body. The next moment, a hand suddenly pressed on his body, and then a negative hollow passed through his body and flew out from behind. Plop. Keisha's eyes widened, and he froze. The next moment, he stopped using moon step and fell hard on the deck. He didn't have a chance to breathe. Several negative hollows rushed over and fell on him. Sorry, I don't deserve to be a human being. Keisha was full of depression, and he knelt there motionless. Vice Admiral Keisha. Seeing this, the Marine screamed there. Fa, let me finish you off. Killer laughed strangely and rushed up directly. The sickles in both his hands spun violently, and he neatly cut off the head of the Vice Admiral from the Marine headquarters. Bang. Clang. On another warship, the same fighting sound continued. A large number of Shadowkins and a zombie army, as well as 3 members of the Netherworld pirates, invaded here and were fighting fiercely with the Marines. Bullets moved smoothly through Katrina Devon's body. She was completely different from her ugly face before. Her skin was smooth and tender, and she was like a beautiful lady with good taste in clothes. My skin is very smooth. Some Marines almost forgot that this was a battlefield and were so attracted by her beauty that their eyes turned red. Kai. But Katrina Devon was extremely cruel. One Marine after another was beheaded by her mercilessly, and their heads rolled to the deck. Damn, woman. Vice Admiral Stainless rushed up and slashed fiercely with his sword. King. Sparks flew as the rapier in Katrina Devon's hand easily blocked the opponent's attack. Then she looked at him with amusement. More on Fufufu. We meet again, Vice Admiral Stainless. This laugh. Are you? Stainless, whose eyes were originally spitting fire, had his pupils dilated. He looked at the sexy beauty with white skin, a beautiful face, and an extremely hot body in front of him in disbelief. You. Are you Crescent Moon Hunter, Katrina Devon? Katrina Devon is an extremely vicious female pirate who makes countless women turn pale. He had led the fleet several times to chase the other party, but the cunning Katrina Devon always escaped. In the end, Vice Admiral Momouzagi personally took action and disguised herself as a beautiful geisha to lure Katrina Devon, who liked to collect beautiful women's heads, into the trap and then caught her. Thanks to that bastard Momouzagi, I wasted my beautiful youth. Katrina Devon laughed strangely. The rapier in her hand showed no mercy at all. Wrapped with armament hockey, it suddenly thrust out. Swish. A sharp slash pierced through the atmosphere. But it was barely avoided by Stainless, and it pierced through the deck behind. King. Sparks splashed as their weapon collided once again as they fought fiercely there. Swish. 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 But, without any warning, several bullets suddenly broke through the air and shot towards Stainless' head. What? Stainless' hair stood up, and without thinking, he dodged subconsciously. Behind him, an unlucky Marine screamed and fell into a pool of blood. Kai. A cold light flashed. Stainless' expression changed drastically, and he was caught off guard. His chest was left with a shocking deep cut that could see the bone. More on Fufufu, you're careless. Katrina Devon laughed strangely. She didn't mind that Van Augur, who was hiding in the sky and constantly sniping high-value targets, interfered with her battle. As long as she could win, she didn't care about fair duel ethics. Not to mention, this is a war, and they have to defeat the enemy by any means. Damn. Stainless was shocked and angry. He could only endure the pain and wave his sword to hastily fight against Katrina Devon, who was relentless and came up again. At the same time, he had to pay attention to the sniper in the dark, putting him completely at a disadvantage, which made him feel extremely aggrieved. Chapter 237, Momouzagi's Terror and Despair on a warship. A thin figure was moving with ghostly speed that contradicted her frail appearance as she dashed past, head crackered all. The Marine she touched let out a scream. Bang. In an instant, they transformed into lifeless toys that spliced together to form a giant doll. Then, they joined the Shadowkins and zombies and rushed toward their targets. Damn. A massive shark-slashing blade swung down, but the thin figure dodged it effortlessly. Vice Admiral Bastille, wearing his signature horned helmet, glared at the intruder. You. Are you Alice, the evil child? His gaze flickered to the dolls with fear in his eyes. The infamous reputation of Alice the evil child spread across the seas. Rumors spoke of a girl who never aged, a pirate appearing no older than 10 yet said to be actually over 30, perhaps even 40. No one could tell. More terrifying still, Alice thrived on deception. She played the role of a weak, innocent child, preying on the sympathy of others or infiltrating the estates of nobles and merchants, learning their secrets. And when the moment struck, she slaughtered them mercilessly, men, women, children, or the elderly. No one was spared. Her methods? Ruthless. Her cruelty? Unmatched. Uncle, you know me? A girl's voice, sweet and melodic, rang out. She squinted her crescent eyes and smiled. What an honor. Drop the act. You're a monster in a child's skin. Bastille roared, swinging his blade in a merciless arc. Crack. The deck split open under the force of his attack, but Alice had already vanished. Then, with lightning-fast speed, she reappeared behind him. Ha, you really are uneducated. Who are you calling a monster? Her innocent face twisted into a grotesque grin. Sharp teeth flashed as she sneered. Didn't your fleet admiral tell you to be polite to ladies? Whoosh. Her right foot, wrapped in armament hockey, lashed out viciously. The impact sent a shockwave across the deck. Bastille barely managed to block with his massive blade, yet the sheer force sent him stumbling backward more than 10 steps. Swish. A shadow streaked through the air. What? Bastile's expression contorted in shock, but it was too late to dodge or block. Then, a terrifying cold light directly tore his body, and blood sprayed into the air. Ah! Vice Admiral Bastile! A Marine screamed, frozen in horror. No one had expected Bastile to fall so easily. Gulp. The sound of liquid pouring echoed across the chaos. A crimson-skinned figure holding a gourd of wine chuckled darkly. Delicious. The infamous heavy drinker, Vasco shot, swayed, his entire being reeking of alcohol. Then, he grinned maniacally and suddenly spewed a massive amount of liquor. Drunken spitfire. Whoosh. A wave of scorching flames engulfed Bastile, who had just been severely injured and had no time to dodge. Crack. Boom. On the other side, one Marine after another screamed as the warship was ruthlessly torn apart by the powerful flying slash and sank to the bottom of the sea. Clang. The sea churned violently as terrifying flying slashes rained down. High above the battlefield, figures were fighting fiercely there, from the sky to the sea's surface. Vice Admiral Momouzagi stood her ground, her sharp gaze darting between the 7 monstrous figures surrounding her: Golden Lion, Swordsman Roma, Gecko Moria, Lunarian, Three-Eyed, Buccaneer and a giant werewolf. She was completely surrounded, making a cold chill run down her spine. This is bad. Momouzagi muttered while tightening her grip on her sword. Slicing wave. Golden Lion struck first, his blade slicing the air, sending a blazing flying slash her way. Dragon slash. Swordsman Ruma followed, his black sword cleaving the sky, his slash taking the form of a massive dragon, roaring as it descended upon her. Swish. Gecko Moria grinned, raising his hands, and black gun barrels emerged from his open mouth and gathered with dazzling light. Bang. A barrage of laser beams shot toward Momouzagi. Two-sword style, ghost flash. Lock, a three-eyed special zombie, moved like a phantom. His twin blade slashed in an X shape, sending 2 massive flying slashes hurtling toward Momouzagi. Flame Dragon. Lucifer, the Lunarian special zombie, raised his blazing sword. Roar. A fire dragon burst forth, with its heat distorting the air around it. Tempest Kick, Line. Tyne, the Buccaneer zombie, lunged forward, his leg slicing through the air like lightning, unleashing a massive wind blade. Soul-scattering Iron Claw. The giant werewolf-off's body crackled with arcs of lightning as his claws tore through the atmosphere. Momouzagi's pupils shrink after seeing a relentless onslaught from every direction and no way of escape. Boom. The ice cracked, the sea's surface boiled, and the air trembled. Momouzagi, bloodied and battered, was blasted across the battlefield. She barely emerged from the rubble, her once pristine appearance now drenched in blood. Damn it! She muttered, with blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. The skin on her body was actually falling off at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was terrifying. Health Rust, 4 penetrations. With an extreme speed, Off rushed over and pierced through Momouzagi. Blood splattered everywhere. Momouzagi was seriously injured, and her movements were already a little sluggish. Although she tried her best to dodge, her shoulder was still torn and bleeding. Her bloody and slightly ferocious face was indescribably solemn. Looking at the powerful figures in front of her, she was a little shocked. What kind of hellish creatures did Obaskluk create? Flame Emperor. A shadow loomed above and swooped down like lightning. A blazing fist, wrapped in armament hockey, plummeted toward her. Boom. The flames shot up to the sky, and the heat waves spread everywhere. The ice surface instantly melted due to the heat wave. Swish. Momouzagi barely dodged the attack. Then, without hesitation, she raised her sword up, just about to counterattack directly. But they gave her no chance. Golden Lion and Lock struck together. An overwhelming storm of flying slash rained down, sealing off all escape routes. Terror and despair surged in Momouzagi's chest. Boom. Chapter 238, Pincer Attack. Boom. Heat waves rolled through the battlefield. Molten magma splashed violently, burning everything in its path. The once solid ice surface, riddled with potholes and deep cracks, continued to melt and was ravaged beyond recognition. Thick steam filled the air, swirling above the boiling seawater, which bubbled furiously, on the verge of complete evaporation. Damn. Noticing the situation of the fleet, Akanu's face was livid, and his eyes were a little bloodshot. Then he waved his arm covered with magma and attacked Luke in front of him. Bang. Luke looked calm and at ease. His fists, intertwined with black and red lightning, continued to crush the atmosphere. He showed no weakness and fought hard with Akanu head-on. Bang. Woo. With the strong collision, the ice surface cracked. The black fist and the hot magma fist clearly did not really touch each other, but it directly blasted the magma away. The exaggerated power shocked Akanu, and he couldn't help but have a change of expression. There seemed to be an invisible barrier between the two. There was a constant collision between them, pushing each other, with neither of them giving in. Hey, it's almost done. Luke's eyes shone, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. Hiss. In a flash, a black figure came with lightning speed. With a murderous aura, it attacked from behind like lightning. The hand knife was intertwined with dazzling lightning, entangled with the armament Haki came through. Health rust, 4 penetrations. What? Akayanu's expression changed, and his hair stood up. His pupils suddenly enlarged, and a large amount of magma kept gushing out. Boom. Magma splashed, accompanied by scarlet blood. Akayanu rolled out of the ice in a mess. Swish. Facing Luke, who was rushed up relentlessly, Akayanu threw one magma bomb after another, blocking Luke's approach. Boom. Damn. After barely stabilizing his body, Akayanu covers his bloody shoulder with an ashen face. His eyes were fixed on Luke's side. The magma bomb that hit Luke's chest, a shadow like silk surged, completely ignoring the high-temperature damage, recovering at speed visible to the naked eye. At this moment, Luke's whole body was covered with lightning, and he stared at Akayanu in front of him with cold eyes. Akayanu, your fate ends here. Hiss. His right hand began to take the shape of a hand knife, and the shadows surged, directly turning into a sharp shadow spear interwoven with terrible black and red lightning. The lightning in the body kept erupting, stimulating the muscles and nerves, greatly enhancing his own combat effectiveness. At the same time, his shadow clone also flashed with vast lightning and disappeared directly beside Luke in an instant. The next moment, it appeared at the other end of Akayanu. The two formed a pincer attack. Don't get carried away. Akayanu was furious and rushed directly towards Luke. His punch wrapped with armament Haki power turned red, emitting hot bubbles and thick smoke. It's too early for you to defeat me. Hound Crimson Lotus. Magma liquid gushed out as the two fists that were swung out with all his strength turned into giant magma hounds. Roar. Carrying a high temperature, it distorted the atmosphere and melted a large area of ice in an instant. One on the left and one on the right, he rushed to Luke and his shadow clone. Health rust, horn shadow knife. Luke's eyes were stern. With one step, his figure instantly disappeared, then, the ferocious giant magma hound that rushed over with its bloody mouth wide open was ruthlessly torn apart. Kai. At this moment, Akayanyu's hair stands on end. With his strong observation Haki, he predicted the fatal crisis and suddenly dodged sideways. Kai. Luke's figure, which was as fast as lightning and could not be captured by the naked eye, disappeared in a flash. At the same time, the shadow clone, who looked exactly like Luke, also disappeared strangely. A sharp black spear tip intertwined with black and red lightning bypassed the giant magma dog that was rushing towards it. Then, from a blind spot, it attacked Akayanyu like lightning. Kai. Blood splashed everywhere. Akayanyu retreated in a panic. A shocking cut was torn on his right shoulder, with the bone visible. Damn it. Akayanyu's face was hideous, it was full of anger and frustration and even some unspeakable fear. He never thought that Luke's strength would reach this level. Although he thought he had overestimated the other party as much as possible, it still exceeded his expectations. Hiss. One on the left and one on the right, two blazing figures, flashing with lightning, launch a combined attack on Akayanyu. Crack. At this moment, a fatal sense of crisis surged from Akayanyu's heart. That is, Aokiji, who was fighting fiercely with Douglas Bullet, and even Kizaru, who was fighting against Redfield in Punk Hazard. Even the two admiral candidates, Momouzagi and Tokakake, who were directly beaten by those special zombies and burned die world and were completely suppressed, could not help but have a drastic change of expression. A strong sense of uneasiness surged in their heart. Is it the move that Borsellino said? The first to bear the brunt was naturally Sakazuki himself. Thinking of Kizaru's extremely cautious introduction and warning, even Akayanyu, the admiral who represented the highest combat power from the Marine headquarters, couldn't help but express unprecedented solemnity. His muscles were tense, and his tendons were bulging. At this moment, his whole body was covered with armament Haki while magma was surging all over his body. He had to be on high alert and dare not be careless. Gurgle. Three-headed hound. The next moment, a three-headed dog stood there, like a giant beast crawling out of hell, bathing in the rolling magma and bubbling with hot bubbles. The three huge heads were hideous and terrifying. Sizzle. The gurgling magma kept melting and evaporating a large area of ice. Without hesitation, Sakazuki showed madness in his eyes and took the initiative to attack directly. Roar. The three-headed giant dog bathed in lava was covered with L-armament Haki. The three extremely ferocious huge heads, with boiling hot and amazing bloody mouths, roared there together and mercilessly pounced on Luke and his shadow clone. Health rust, horn shadow knife. In an instant, two figures with terrifying momentum once again disappeared at the same time. The extremely terrifying punch directly overwhelmed the weather. one in front and one behind, piercing through fiercely. It was so fast that Akainu couldn't react at all. It also directly blocked Akainu's retreat, leaving no chance for Akainu to dodge. Whether it was speed or strength, it was far beyond the last time Luke and the Shadow Clone attacked Kizaru. This is a fatal blow that cannot be defended or avoided. Boom. It was just a moment of stalemate. The terrifying three-headed magma dog was ruthlessly destroyed and torn apart. The powerful punch that was wrapped with armament haki and conqueror haki carry unparalleled power. One after the other, it hit Akainu hard, whose pupils were wide open, full of unwillingness and despair. Boom. Chapter 239, Death Gurgle. Magma Hell. The ice surface is constantly melting. A hysterical roar echoed there. Boom. Accompanied by a violent explosion. It was as if the underwater volcano that had been silent for a long time was completely activated. A large amount of hot red magma kept gushing out in all directions like it was about to burn everything and leave no life behind. Sizzle. Thick smoke billowed up, and the entire ice surface was completely melted. The seawater was boiling and was dyed red. Sakazuki. Admiral Akainu. No. How is it possible? Damn it. How could this happen? At this moment, countless Marines who were fighting the Netherworld pirates opened their eyes wide and looked at the distant ice surface in disbelief. The picture and scene seemed to be frozen directly. On the ice surface that had already collapsed, a large amount of magma seemed to have turned into a small lake where hot bubbles kept coming out. In the outer area, a large amount of magma was extinguished by the seawater and turned into volcanic rock. A tall figure stood there, with his chest ruthlessly blasted through. Woo! In the air, a pair of dark devil's wings spread out. Luke looked down at his burned arm. If someone looks closely, they will find that the wound is in the shape of a palm. It's like being caught by a giant lava hand and burned. It's really scary. If he hadn't been the most perfect lineage factor warrior. Not only does he have a tough exoskeleton, but he also has amazing recovery ability. He can be said to be invulnerable to swords and guns. He is afraid that his whole right hand has been burned to ashes in the first place. A counterattack before death? What a terrible monster. A stern look flashed in Luke's eye while looking at Akainu, who has lost his breath of life but is still standing. Under such circumstances, I was still hurt by you. After speaking, Luke took out a bottle of mysterious medicine that was less than the size of a thumb from his pocket and opened the lid. 2 drops of crystal clear liquid medicine fell down into his mouth. Swish. Luke's whole body shone with holy light. The burned arm was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, the injuries on his body had recovered as before. Even the stamina that was consumed in the previous fierce battle was instantly restored and all the tiredness was gone. Damn it, Sakazuki. Aokiji's eyes were fixed on the figure that stood firm. Aokiji, who was fighting with Douglas Bullet, had an angry look on his face. He clenched his fists tightly with his eyes spitting fire. Hey, don't worry, it will be your turn soon. Douglas Bullet grinned, then he manipulated the giant steel and waved his huge iron fist, wrapped in armament haki, and slammed it over. Don't be so arrogant, pirate. Aokiji's eyes were filled with determination, and his face was more solemn than ever. He was not willing to be outdone and jumped up. His fists were covered with ice and were wrapped in armament haki, and he swung his fists with all his might and blasted out, Ice Glove. Bang! A loud explosion echoed. The 2 fists, which were not equal in size, collided there. But the Iron Giant fist was completely unable to suppress the powerful Ice Fist. The 2 continued to stalemate and confront each other. Neither of them was willing to give in. Woo! Swoosh! The amazing shockwave kept sweeping and raging, making the waves even more turbulent. Hey, ha ha, that's right. Douglas Bullet grinned there. Not enough, let me be more excited. Aokiji. His observation haki locked onto Aokiji in front of him, and the giant iron fist was wrapped in a powerful armament haki as he kept swinging it. He looked like he would not stop until he had smashed Aokiji into a pulp. Bang! 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 The cold air was surging, and there were constant loud explosions. The ice surface was shaking violently, collapsing and cracking. Aokiji was also unwilling to be outdone and kept a head-on collision with Bullet. Don't underestimate me, pirate. Aokiji was filled with unspeakable anger. He swung his fist fearlessly, and the punch flowed with strong armament haki and blasted towards Douglas Bullet fiercely. Ultimate Fist. Douglas Bullet's face was ferocious, and he roared air. While operating the huge robot, a huge amount of armament haki surged out. The shiny black iron fist rubbed the atmosphere violently until it turned red. Boom! The loud explosion shook the sky. The terrifying collision caused the ice surface to collapse, and huge cracks spread and expanded there. Bang! However, what was shocking was that the huge robot was blown away. Douglas Bullet yelled unwillingly, Aokiji. Ice block, pheasant back. What responded to him was Aokiji's murderous voice. A huge ice bird, carrying endless cold air, rushed out directly towards the giant steel. Boom. At this moment, a murderous intent emerged, and Aokiji's hair stood up. Almost in an instant, two terrifying figures suddenly flashed. One on the left and one on the right attacked violently. Health Rust, Horn Shadow Knife. The black and red lightning intertwined as the sharp shadow spear cuts. It seems to be invisible, and the naked eye cannot catch it at all, just like lightning. Aokiji, who just took advantage of the victory and wanted to freeze Douglas Bullet in one breath, had no time to dodge. The attack came extremely fast. Kai. Blood splattered as Aokiji's chest was directly pierced from front to back. It seemed that his dodging trajectory had been predicted in advance. Cough. Aokiji widened his eyes and vomited blood there. With both hands, he grabbed the two big hands that pierced his chest, and then astonishing freezing air rushed out, freezing them at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, Aokiji stared at the transparent figure that gradually appeared in front of him, Obaskluk. Chapter 240, Escape Kyuzen. Admiral Aokiji. Seeing such a horrifying scene, countless Marines were shocked, and they screamed hysterically there. They stared blankly at the blue figure with a pierced chest and vomiting blood. Including Momouzagi and Tokakake, who were being hunted and covered in blood, they couldn't help but look over with wide eyes and disbelief. They were full of grief and anger, with their eyes spitting fire. Swish. A dazzling light burst out but was deflected by a pitch-black bat umbrella. Boom. The fierce explosion directly raised the distant mountain and the doctor to the ground. Clang. The sound of metal clashing was deafening. The extremely sharp lightsaber collided with a bat umbrella. Kizaru, who was fighting fiercely with Redfield, couldn't help but be silent, and his heart sank to the bottom. Kyuzen. That guy, his methods are really cruel. After watching this scene, Redfield chuckled there. With his eyes full of mockery, he sneered at Kizaru in front of him. It seems that you, Marines, have completely miscalculated this time. He can imagine when the news of the annihilation of the Buster Call fleet was passed back. Sengoku, the fleet admiral of the Marine headquarters, and Kong, the commander-in-chief of the world government, these high-ranking officials would be so angry and regretful. It must be said that Obaskluk was too cruel. 30,000 Marine elite, 3 admirals representing the highest combat power, and 10 vice-admirals, including 2 admiral candidates. This time, the Marines will not be able to easily recover in 10 years or even longer. Once the news spreads, the sea will soon experience unimaginable storms and turmoil. In fact, the degree of deterioration is not inferior to the beginning of the Great Pirate Era, and may even be more chaotic. Swish on the ice surface, a shadow flashed instantly, and the two figures disappeared. On his chest, there were 2 bloody holes on the left and right. Goodbye, Aokiji. More than 10 meters away, Luke's eyes were cold, and he spoke lightly while looking at Aokiji, who was covered in blood. His right arm, which was mostly frozen and covered with frost, burst into hot flames, ruthlessly evaporating the frost covering his arm. Let me take you to your last ride, Aokiji. Just then, Douglas Bullet's tall figure broke away from the completely frozen giant steel, and he ran out at an astonishing speed. His huge punch crushed the atmosphere as he slammed into Aokiji fiercely. Ice wall. The cold air surged, and the huge ice wall stood there, blocking Douglas Bullet's powerful attack. Bang. A loud explosion sound. The extremely thick ice wall was directly blasted through. But Aokiji, covered in blood, had a determined look in his eyes and he charged forward towards Luke. Swish. Luke had no expression on his face, and his feet suddenly stepped on the ground. The next moment, a silk-like shadow surged out and directly submerged Aokiji. When he just passed through the shadow realm and shuttled over, he had already summoned Wapol and commanded him to use his Devil Fruit ability to recover the Devil Fruit in Akainu's body. Whether it is Akainu or Aokiji's Devil Fruit, they are both top Devil Fruit in this sea, and he would not miss any of them easily. The terrifying cold air kept gushing out. The dying Aokiji struggled to death, unwilling to surrender easily. However, the terrifying shadow kept crushing towards him. One after another, the extremely sharp shadow spears were directly wrapped with armament hockey and stabbed out like a vine, penetrating Aokiji's body mercilessly. Kai. Hey. It's a defeat, the Marines. With his arms crossed, Douglas Bullet bared his teeth and laughed strangely. But his eyes kept glancing at Luke, full of fiery fighting spirit. At the same time, he was somewhat vigilant. This young monster was indeed incredibly strong. He had solved Admiral Akainu so quickly. Moreover, he attacked and killed Aokiji in the blink of an eye. Although he was the one who mainly held the other party back, there was no doubt about Obaskluk's strength. It was really frightening. Well, the next step is the end. Luke looked directly in the direction of Punk Hazard. He ignored the two admiral candidates, Momouzagi and Tokakake, who were surrounded by Burned Eye World and the Zombie Kings. Because the two of them were already trapped in a jar and were destined to be unable to escape. Swish. Swish. In an instant, he and his shadow clone instantly disappeared from the spot. Swish. However, just as Luke appeared on Punk Hazard. Light explosion. Without any warning, Kizaru's eyes turned fierce. His whole body suddenly burst out with dazzling light, so dazzling that it was impossible to look directly at him. What? A strong sense of crisis made Redfield, who was fighting with him, have a drastic change of expression. Then, without hesitation, he retreated swiftly. Boom. A terrifying explosion happened there, and an exaggerated mushroom cloud rose into the sky. The whole island was shaking violently. Woohoo! Clatter. The amazing gale swept and ravaged the island while huge waves surged on the sea. Is this the same move again? He's really decisive enough. Upon seeing this scene, Luke's face remains unchanged. This is why he didn't hunt Kizaru first at the beginning. This monkey is too slippery. In order to prevent them from slipping away. After he got rid of Akainu, he decisively set his sights on Aokiji. After all, who knows whether this admiral, who is usually very generous to his subordinates, will resolutely abandon those marines and run away for the future of the marines. As for Aokiji, it is hard to say. At least, Kizaru has an ambiguous personality and is unpredictable. It's not that he is afraid of death, but this guy is definitely capable of doing such a thing. Just like now, knowing that he can't save anyone and if he continues to stay, the whole army will be wiped out. He decisively self-destructed and took the opportunity to leave the battlefield without looking back. Chapter 241, will exist in name only. Whoosh. At the ruined island, a large number of bats kept flapping their wings and gathered, and then Redfield's figure slowly appeared directly there. His whole body was in a little mess. At the critical moment, he didn't hesitate to explode to escape. The huge flesh wings at Redfield's back flapped gently, making him float in the sky. Looking at the golden light that flashed in the sky, he turned his head and said to Luke lightly, "It seems that your goal of annihilating all these marines cannot be achieved." While looking at the other party, he could not help but sigh. In the hundreds of years since the establishment of the marines, he is afraid that no one has ever been able to do such a feat. The other party almost directly wiped out all the high-end combat power of the marines, leaving the marines' fleet admiral as a commander without troops. That is, the marines were under great pressure from the world government and were ordered to quickly the netherworld pirates, which had not yet established a foothold in the new world. So, it accidentally saved some strength instead. Otherwise, if 50,000 or even more elite marine troops were dispatched, the casualties would be even greater. Then, this former overlord of the sea will be completely damaged and unable to recover. After all, the marines have already dispatched 3 admirals and 2 admiral candidates at once. In terms of high-end combat power, it is obviously impossible to continue to increase. No matter how many low-level combat forces there are, they cannot offset the advantages of the netherworld pirate. In particular, those zombie giant armies have not really been dispatched. It doesn't matter. While staring in the direction where Kizaru escaped, Luke crossed his arms and said indifferently, "After this battle, the tide of the new era is destined to arrive early. A mere admiral can no longer prevent the marines from being destined to decline. If the world government does not intervene personally, no one can stop the rise of the netherworld pirates." At the side, facing the siege of the Zombie King and Burned Eye World and others, the 2 admiral candidates, Tokakake and Momouzagi, fought hard. There are also those large and small warships scattered on the sea, still fighting constantly, but the netherworld pirates have already occupied the absolute upper hand. He couldn't help but smile. Although he failed to achieve his goal, the results were already great enough. This operation was much smoother than he imagined. The title of the Overlord of the Sea of the Marines will exist in name only. I have already completed what I promised you. Redfield stretched out his right hand and said indifferently, "Then, my heart, is not it time to return it? But the battle is not over yet." Luke smiled while looking at Momouzagi and Tokakake, the 2 admiral candidates who were still resisting and unwilling to surrender. "Help me catch those 2 guys, then I will give you back your heart. I have paid you a precious mythical zone fruit. If you don't help, won't I lose a lot, right?" Although he was full of energy and could continue to fight. But he had to guard against these unruly guys. Besides, why did he have to do it himself when he could let others do it? What a petty guy. Redfield looked at Luke deeply. His figure flashes in the distance, where Tokakake was fighting with Burned Eye World at an astonishing speed, leaving a red afterimage dark storm. Almost the moment he arrived, he had already made a decisive and sharp move. Kai. The umbrella in his hand was pressed down, and a black spiral slash swept out directly towards the horrified Tokakake. Boom. Time goes back a little. Marine headquarters, in the Fleet Admiral's office. At this moment, Sengoku and Tsuru, who were always paying attention to the battle situation on the front line, looked unhappy because, not long ago, news came from the front line. Before the war started, the fleet had suffered heavy losses. First, the Netherworld pirates used the power of the float fruit to smash an island from an altitude of tens of thousands of meters under the cover of the extremely severe thunderstorm, making the fleet directly lose a quarter of the warships and troops. Then, they rushed directly to Dressrosa and surrounded the Netherworld pirates. Before they could open fire, they were hit by a large number of laser weapons and suffered heavy losses due to being caught off guard. Immediately afterward, some shadow monsters and zombies rushed out from the corners of the cabin in some unknown way and attacked them. The Marines were caught off guard once again and suffered heavy losses. World Destroyer, Verndi World, Damon Air, Douglas Bullet and Red the Aloof, Patrick Redfield. These three pirates, who were once notorious and imprisoned in the Eternal Hell, have reached an alliance with Obaskluk and have held back Admiral Aokiji, Admiral Kizaru, and other strong men. It was completely beyond the Marines' expectations. They were imprisoned in the Impel Down for more than 10 or 20 years. Their strength should have been greatly reduced due to torture, but for some reason, they are in excellent condition. Their combat power is almost no less than that of their peak period. Even Redfield, who should have been old, is said to have recovered his youthful state. In addition, Obaskluk also created other special zombies with the same strength as Golden Lion, completely suppressing Momouzagi, the candidate for Admiral. Currently, even Admiral Akanyu, who is fighting with Obaskluk, is at a disadvantage. Damn it, we are so careless. Sengoku looked livid. He slammed the desk in front of him hard, gritted his teeth, and said, I didn't expect that after all the calculations, I still missed a step. No one expected that Obaskluk actually had such a trump card. Not only can he create the kind of shadow monster that is different from the zombie, but he was also able to transport a large number of troops directly to the warship unexpectedly and completely disintegrated our advantage. Vice Admiral Tsuru was worried and said faintly, now, we have immediately asked Vice Admiral Drax to take Garp and Zephyr to the battlefield to support. I hope it's not too late. Vice Admiral Drax from the Marine headquarters was the devil user of the bird fruit, model, Eagle. So, as soon as he learned that the situation on the front line was unfavorable, Sengoku had the other party take Garp, the Marines hero, and Blackarm, Zephyr, the former Marines admiral, to the battlefield, ensuring that everything was foolproof. It can be said that so far, except for Sengoku, who did not go out, almost all the high-end combat forces that the Marines can send out have been sent out. Bulu, I am Sengoku. How is the situation? After the Den Mushi was connected, Sengoku looked solemn and immediately asked in a deep voice. Vice Admiral Tsuru was also listening there, but she was a little worried because there were reports earlier that the vivre cards of Vice Admirals, such as Momonga, Onigamo, and others, were burned out one after another and turned into ashes. It can be said that the situation is not good. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, it's not good. A panicked voice came from the Den Mushi. Admiral Akanyu, he. Sakazuki? What happened to him? Hearing this, Sengoku and Vice Admiral Tsuru both couldn't help but feel something wrong, and a strong sense of uneasiness surged in their hearts. His vivre card was burned to ashes. What? Sengoku and Tsuru's faces changed drastically. Damn it, how could this happen? Sengoku's figure shook, and his face flushed red. The next moment, a mouthful of blood spurted out directly from his mouth. Chapter 242, End of the Warfire Fist. On a chaotic battlefield, on a warship, Jin turned into a mass of flames and rushed out. Boom. The huge cabin was ruthlessly blasted through. The Marines were engulfed in the fire and screamed miserably. On another warship several kilometers away, lightning flashed, and a large number of Marines were directly charred and fell down, screaming there miserably. Damn pirates. Vice Admiral Minasan roared in anger. He stomped his feet hard, wielded the sword wrapped with armament haki, and rushed up violently. But in an instant, Wiper had turned into lightning and disappeared in front of him. God's judgment. In the blink of an eye, Wiper suddenly appeared more than 10 meters away, then he raised his right hand suddenly and aimed it directly at Minasan. Sizzle. The next moment, Wiper's wrist swung out and turned into a huge lightning column, releasing a powerful lightning current. It was so dazzling that people couldn't look directly at it. Instant transmission. Minasan's body was like lightning. Relying on the prediction of his observation haki, Minasan stepped hard, and his whole body turned into an image, barely dodging this terrible blow. Boom. The huge mast, together with the cabin, was directly ruthlessly blasted through. One by one, the Marines were directly affected by the flowing lightning current and screamed there. They were electrocuted and burned all over and fell there, and it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. This monster. This horrifying scene made Minasan shiver. It must be admitted that the Rumble fruit user is really too difficult to deal with. But at this moment, Minasan had not yet had time to breathe a sigh of relief. A hand had already been placed on him like lightning. 100 million volts, discharge. Ah! At this moment, on another large warship, a large number of Shadowkins and zombies were fighting with the Marines. Suddenly, an invisible hurricane came, and the dozen Marines there let out a scream. Their bodies were torn apart by invisible sharp blades, and they fell directly into a pool of blood. Asshole! Don't even think about doing whatever you want. A cold light flashed as a swift figure rushed over. Holding the sword wrapped in armament haki, he slashed fiercely, but he was blocked by the extremely sharp claws that looked like sickles. Hey! Kuro stared at the Vice Admiral in front of him, licked his lips, and grinned. Marines, your good days are over. Don't be so proud, pirates. Vice Admiral Mozam gritted his teeth. He witnessed the heroic sacrifices made by Admiral Akainu and Aokiji, so at this moment, his face was full of grief and determination. However, among the Vice Admirals, he was at the bottom of the list, and he couldn't change anything at all. Clang! Sparks splashed as he kept waving his sword and slashing wildly. But they were all easily blocked by Kuro with ease. Raging storm. Kuro suddenly retreated, and he turned into a hurricane that could not be seen by the naked eye. Then, his sickle-like claws swung out like lightning. Swish! The dense wind blades intertwined into a huge hurricane and swept toward Vice Admiral Mozam. Ah! The Marines around had no time to dodge, their bodies were ruthlessly torn apart, and they died a miserable death. At the side, Mozam couldn't dodge in time, and he was hit head-on, leaving many bloody wounds on his body. Swish! The next moment, a swift figure rushed over, and the sharp claws wrapped with half-baked armament haki penetrated Mozam's body. Mozam's pupils suddenly dilated, he looked down at his chest pierced by the claws and vomited blood, and then he fell into endless darkness. Goodbye. At the same time, on the ice surface ahead. As expected, with the participation of Redfield, Momouzagi and Tokakake, the two admiral candidates who resisted stubbornly, were soon hit hard. After losing their fighting power, they were directly caught by the zombie army and were handcuffed with sea prism stone. Damn pirates! Momouzagi, covered in blood and disheveled, was handcuffed by high-purity sea prism stone, making her powerless. Let me go. Give up, Giant-chan. We lost. The bloody and miserable Tokakake on the side had long lost his initial spirit. Obask Luke. Momouzagi gnashed her teeth. Her eyes were red, filled with strong unwillingness, as she stared fiercely at Luke in front of her. Having witnessed Admiral Akainu and Aokiji's death, Momouzagi was filled with grief and indignation. Ah, Vice Admiral Momouzagi, we are old friends. Don't look at me with such scary eyes. Luke smiled and patted the other party's cheek. Being angry can easily make a woman old. Asshole. Momouzagi, who was cursing, suddenly thought of something. Her pupil shrank sharply, and she looked at Luke in disbelief. You are Wind Swordsman, Yasuo? She didn't expect that the other party was actually Wind Swordsman, Yasuo, who had a brief encounter with her. I didn't expect you to remember it. It's an honor. Luke smiled slightly. He said so, but he didn't show any mercy. Soon, under his instruction, the two admiral candidates were directly cut into pieces by Law using the power of his devil fruit. Then, Desire used the power of the card fruit to seal those limbs into different cards and locked them in the castle inside Caponebuch's body. And with the defeat of the two admiral candidates, the 7 zombie kings were freed up and joined the battle on those warships. The morale of the Marines, which had already fallen due to the sacrifice of Admiral Akainu, Admiral Aokiji, and others, had already fallen to the bottom, and the Marines could no longer resist. Thousands of Marines were captured. In addition, more than 30 warships of various sizes were directly captured. Although some of them were seriously damaged due to the fierce battle, important structures such as the keel were not damaged and could be directly repaired and refurbished for use by the pirates. This battle, which was destined to shock the whole world and cause a huge storm, has truly come to an end. Chapter 243, I will take full responsibility, Mr. Sengoku. In the unknown sea, dazzling golden light flew across the sky. I'm very sorry, we lost. The pale and weak Kizaru said bitterly, if nothing unexpected happens, Momouzagi and Tokakake should have been. Borsalino, it's not your fault. I just received the news that the two of them were defeated and captured. At the other end of the Den Mushi, in the Fleet Admiral's office, Sengoku no longer had the high spirits of the past and clenched his fists tightly. His whole face was pale, and he slumped on the chair. He smiled miserably and said, You can evacuate decisively, which is the best choice, saving the last bit of face for the Marines. At least there was no real annihilation. It was my decision-making mistake as the fleet admiral that led to this catastrophe. I underestimated the Netherworld pirates. I will take full responsibility for this matter. At the side, Vice Admiral Tsuru sighed softly. It was rare that she did not persuade but remained silent. Because she knew this was the best result. With such a huge loss, the Marines suffered an unprecedented defeat, and it can even be said that the loss was extremely heavy. There are countless officers, including the 2 admirals, 2 admiral candidates, 10 vice admirals, rear admirals, and other Marine officers, who were lost in battle. Someone must take responsibility, and Fleet Admiral Sengoku, the highest officer of the Marines, will naturally bear the brunt and must step down. Suppose the world government is more domineering and determined to investigate? In that case, she's afraid that Sengoku will be held in military court. Still, with the current situation of the Marines, she believes that the top leaders of the world government dare not mess around. At most, Sengoku will resign. As for the hero of the Marines, Garp the Fist, who had refused to be promoted to admiral several times, and Black Arm Zephyr, who had already resigned from the position of admiral and retired to the second line to become instructors and devoted themselves to training newcomers, obviously could not take over this position. Kizaru is the best candidate, even though he was defeated in the battle. Regardless of prestige or qualifications, the only one who is qualified to take over this position in the Marines is him. Unless the world government is ready to let Kong, who has been promoted to the commander-in-chief of the world government, take over the position of fleet admiral again. Or, it is determined to parachute a new fleet admiral to try to rectify the Marines. But the former is easy to say. If it is the latter, it will be troublesome. Those Marines who have worked hard from the bottom level to the top level are bound to have great opinions, and it may cause great turmoil. Borsellino. Next, the Marines are in your hands. Sengoku said hoarsely into the Den Mushi. Sengoku seemed to have aged more than 10 years in an instant. He was already gray-haired, but he kept his hair black with hair treatments, trying to make himself look younger and more majestic. At this moment, he was fully aged. It was as if his energy and spirit had been drained away, and his whole body was full of decadence. Mr. Sengoku, you. Far away in the New World. Borsellino, who was rushing back, stopped suddenly. His eyes suddenly widened, and he was a little speechless. That is. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed. He caught a glimpse of a huge eagle flapping its wings toward Dressrosa at an astonishing speed and noticed the 2 figures above. Baloo. Baloo at this moment, in the Fleet Admiral's office. Sengoku just hung up the communication with Kizaru when the Den Mushi next to him suddenly opened his eyes and made a rapid sound. Hey, the higher-up is here to punish me. Glancing at the color of the Den Mushi, Sengoku said to Vice Admiral Tsuru next to him self-deprecatingly. Without procrastination, he took a deep breath and grabbed the microphone. I am Sengoku. Sengoku, you. A burst of furious voices just came out of the Den Mushi when it was interrupted mercilessly by the furious Sengoku. Your Excellency, are you satisfied now? Sengoku, what do you mean? You Marines are incompetent, leading to defeat and heavy losses, but you blame us, right? 2 admirals, 2 admiral candidates, and 10 vice admirals. Such a loss is ridiculous. The reputation of the world government has been lost by you. Once the news of the annihilation of the entire fleet spreads in the sea, do you know what consequences will be caused? At the other end of the Den Mushi, after the 5 elders received the news, they were obviously furious and exasperated. In fact, if it weren't for the CP organization's repeated confirmation, they simply couldn't believe such a battle report and thought that they had heard it wrong. What do I mean? Sengoku's eyes were spitting fire. His whole body was also full of anger, and he fought back tit for tat. I don't deny that such a big mistake. I, the Marines Fleet Admiral, am to blame, but doesn't the world government have any responsibility? What on earth is the CP organization doing? Why did the Netherworld pirates develop quietly to this extent, and you didn't receive any useful information? He was already mentally prepared to step down. All along, as the Fleet Admiral, he has been extremely frustrated because of the constraints of the world government's top leaders. So now, he didn't want to be hypocritical with these high-ranking and domineering leaders, and he fought back directly without hesitation. The Marines have not made full preparations, and even the intelligence of the Netherworld pirates has not been investigated clearly. You are so impatient and rash, blindly ordering the Marines to launch a buster call against the Netherworld pirates. Who would have thought that the 3 admirals, 2 admiral candidates, several vice admirals, 30,000 Marine elite, and a fleet of 80 warships all failed and suffered an unprecedented defeat? Why, you are now eager to pass the blame and come to me, the Fleet Admiral, to punish, right? While speaking, Sengoku clenched his fists. His eyebrows were raised, and his face was full of anger. He completely let go of his scruples. For the first time in decades since joining the Marines, he was extremely tough and confronted the five elders, who controlled the highest power of the world government. He responded loudly there, "Then I can tell you the answer now. I, Sengoku, am willing to take full responsibility for the defeat and resign. If you still want me to take the blame and send me to a military court for trial, you can do whatever you want." Click. As soon as he finished speaking, he hung up the Den Mushi directly. On the other end of the Den Mushi, the five elders in Mangekyō eyes looked at each other in bewilderment. They were stunned for a moment. Then, they became extremely angry and slammed the table hard, somewhat furious. Bastard. Chapter 244, Four Emperors. Hurry up, everyone, cheer up. That afternoon, in the unknown sea area. At the headquarters of the World Economy News Agency, a large albatross in a suit and bow tie stood there, excitedly directing the busy employees while holding the photos faxed from Dressrosa. "This is unprecedented big news. It will definitely set off the entire sea." It was the president of the World Economy News Agency, one of the emperors of the underworld. "Big news, Morgans. Gulu. It's really unbelievable." An editor flipped through the photos he had just copied, swallowed his saliva, and said in disbelief, "Are the Marines so vulnerable?" The content of these photos was the bodies of Admiral Akainu and Admiral Aokiji, as well as the scenes of captured Marines such as Momozagi and Tokakake wearing shackles. If it were spread out, he is afraid the entire sea would be shaken. Kawahahaha, who could have thought of it? Morgans grinned and said with a strange smile, 3 admirals come out together, plus 10 vice admiral including 2 admiral candidates, leading 30,000 elite troops and 80 warships of various sizes to launch a buster call against the netherworld pirates. As a result, the fleet that was formed for the first time in more than a decade to expedition to the New World was almost wiped out. He took a deep breath, suppressed his excitement, and sighed. Among the 3 admirals, Akainu and Aokiji died, and Kizaru retreated when he saw the situation was not good. More than 5,000 Marines were captured, including several vice admirals. He could imagine completely what a sensation tomorrow's news would cause. The entire sea is likely to experience unprecedented turmoil again. Since the opening of the Great Pirate Era, the Marines have tried their best to suppress the pirates who are constantly rising and making trouble everywhere and stabilize the situation in the sea. All efforts will be completely in vain. It's unbelievable. I didn't expect the netherworld pirates to be so powerful. Obaskluk seems to have the qualifications to challenge monsters like Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido. This issue of the newspaper, Our World Economy News, is destined to break the previous sales record again. The reporters and editors of the World Economy News present talk among themselves while feeling a little shocked because this news is so shocking that it's unbelievable. Everyone cheer up, I will handle the title content of this issue myself. After looking around at employees of the World Economy News, Morgan spread his wings there and said excitedly, according to the request of the netherworld pirates, the 4 great pirates, Black Prison, Obaskluk, Whitebeard, Edward Newgate, Big Mom, Charlotte Linlin, and the Beast Kaido, will be listed together as the 4 emperors of the New World. Kawahahaha, the 4 top pirates who reign over the sea like emperors. 4 emperors, their ideas coincide with mine. Speaking of this after speaking, the president of the World Economy newspaper, who is good at manipulating intelligence and public opinion, has his eyes shining and is full of expectations. He had already had this idea in mind and wanted to wait until the Red Hair Pirates and the Okaku Pirates decided on the winner before he would use the slogan of the 4 emperors in the newspaper. Unexpectedly, the netherworld pirates also had such an idea. Morgans couldn't wait to witness the moment of the coronation of the 4 emperors. What about Okaku? Speaking of which, he is also a famous pirate in the sea. How about listing them together as the 5 emperors? Okaku? That guy's will is a little bit weak. Morgans was full of disgust and sneered. At best, he can only be regarded as a local tyrant who lives in a corner. Sooner or later, he will be submerged by the tide of the times and cannot be worthy of the title of Emperor of the Sea. The era of pirates ranking by seniority has long passed. Now is the era of speaking by strength. This time, he is ready to guide the public opinion of the sea and will try his best to create a pattern of 4 emperors standing side by side. He can't just fill it with numbers. Then, President, you were optimistic about the Red Hair Pirates that were in conflict with Okaku's pirates. Do you want to wait for a while? A member of the World Economy News raised his hand and asked. There was no other reason because Morgans had told them more than once that he was very optimistic about the Red Hair Pirates. Red-haired Shanks? No way. Who made him unlucky? Morgan sighed. After this battle, the reputation of the former overlord of the sea will no longer exist. Obaskluk's power is comparable to Whitebeard's, and he has become the new uncrowned king. I just don't know how many prisoners he has conquered from the Impel Down. After all, even Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world, might not be able to win the war against the Marines. Those are the 3 admirals who represent the highest combat power from the Marine headquarters, and there are 10 vice-admirals, including 2 admiral candidates. There are more than 30,000 elite Marines and 80 warships of all sizes. Although the Whitebeard pirates are numerous and powerful, they have more than 30 large and small pirate crews under their command, and their strength is not weak. But in Morgan's opinion, it's hard to say who will win. No matter how you look at it, the Marines have a better chance of winning. This is also considering that the Netherworld pirates may have cooperated with the monsters imprisoned in the Impel Downs to accomplish such an unprecedented feat and achieve such a result. Therefore, he felt that putting Obaskluk on par with Whitebeard, the legendary pirate, it's not a disparagement of the other party. Next, the Netherworld pirates will inevitably expand aggressively, picking the weak persimmons. I think he probably won't give the red hair pirates a chance to rise. Looking at the bounty list of Obaskluk, Morgans pondered for a moment and inferred there. You mean Okaka will be targeted by the Netherworld pirates? The staff of the World Economy News present couldn't help but feel shocked. Wouldn't it be possible that they would clash with the red hair pirates? Who knows? Kawahahaha. Morgans shrugged. Then he grinned. The wave of the new era has arrived, and those rotten old ships are destined to be overturned. Black Prison, Obaskluk. This monster, his future is really more and more exciting. Chapter 245, News spread to the sea, the birth of the 4 emperors, the defeat of Justice, 30,000 elite Marines annihilated. The great battle near Dressrosa, the Buster Call fleet versus the Netherworld pirates, the destroyed Buster Call. Obaskluk led the Netherworld pirates to defeat the Marines' fleet head-on. Okamu and Aokiji, 2 admirals of the Marines, died heroically. The decline of the Overlord of the Sea, the real era of great pirates has arrived. The list of the top 4 pirates reigned over the sea like emperors. 4 emperors? Whitebeard, Big Mom, the Beast, Black Prison. 4 great pirates with both strength and influence reigning over the new world, the birth of the new uncrowned king. Captain of the Netherworld pirates, Obaskluk. Fleet Admiral Sengoku resigns. Former Fleet Admiral Khan returns, temporarily taking over the position of Fleet Admiral. The world government holds a press conference, announcing that justice will never compromise with evil and will continue to form an expeditionary fleet to defeat the pirates around the world. Kong, the commander-in-chief of the world government, expresses his deepest condolences to the Marines who died this time. Justice will never give up. The Marines will never back down and will fight the evil pirates to the end. The birth of a pirate with a 5 billion bounty, the most vicious pirate in history, Obaskluk, the best in history? The world government declared that Obaskluk was the most evil, sinister, despicable, and shameless traitor and conspirator. The next day, countless news coups, carrying a large number of brand new newspapers printed overnight with the scent of ink, flew to all parts of the world. As the news spread, the sea was in an uproar, and the world was shocked. Oh my god. Is this true? Gulu. Am I seeing this correctly? How is this possible? The Marines have failed? The Marines' Buster Call was destroyed. The 3 admirals represent the highest combat power from the Marine headquarters, plus 10 vice-admirals, including 2 admiral candidates, and 30,000 Marine elite, 80 warships of various sizes. With such a lineup, they still actually lost? Are you kidding me? It's incredible. Did the Netherworld pirates actually defeat the fleet led by the 3 admirals? No, I don't believe it. That's Admiral. The highest combat power of the Marines, how could they lose? Unbelievable. Admiral Akainu, who was famous for being tough bones, actually died in battle. And Admiral Aokiji, this admiral who has a very high reputation among the people and is highly welcomed and respected by the people, he actually also died. Hiss. The Marines suffered such a huge loss. This is the first time in history, right? Is that Obaskluk so powerful? The Netherworld pirates. It's really hiding too deeply. What's going on? As the overlord of the sea, the Marines were defeated. What would happen to the world now? All forces, big and small, were alarmed. They were so shocked that their jaws dropped, and they couldn't believe their eyes. In addition to being horrified, countless people were discussing it, full of panic and anxiety. No one expected that the Marines, known as the overlord of the sea, would suffer an unprecedented defeat. The entire fleet was annihilated, and they even lost 2 admirals. Only one Admiral Kizaru, seeing the bad situation, retreated decisively and escaped from Dressrosa. It was really unbelievable. Has the strength of the Netherworld pirates become so strong? Or has the Marines, which once touted itself as the overlord of the sea, declined to such an extent? First, the hero of the Marines, Garp, who was constantly praised by the Marines and the world government and almost deified, was severely injured by Obaskluk. Now, even the Marines' invincible Buster Call fleet was destroyed by the Netherworld pirates led by Obaskluk. It is simply unimaginable. The current Marines can be said to have suffered heavy losses and were seriously injured. Are they still capable of maintaining order and peace in the sea? The four emperors? The four pirates who reign over the New World like emperors? Whitebeard, Big Mom, the Beasts. Plus, Black Prison, who just broke into the New World and directly defeated the Marines' Buster Call and rose like a hot knife through butter. These four can indeed be said to be notorious and well-deserved emperors. Yes, if they are called the emperor, they are indeed qualified and indisputable. If the Whitebeard pirates, Big Mom pirates, Beasts pirates, Netherworld pirates, these four major forces unite, even the Marines will be unable to resist, right? 5 billion bounty is really high. I remember that Obaskluk was less than 18 years old, right? Except for the former king of the pirates, Goldie Roger, who was publicly executed, such a bounty can be said to be second only to Whitebeard. Yes, since Whitebeard's bounty officially exceeded 5 billion belly 10 years ago, his bounty has not changed for many years. Has Fleet Admiral Sengoku resigned? I didn't expect that the previous Fleet Admiral Khan would come back. What's the point of an old man who is half buried in the ground coming out at this time? Indeed, if I remember correctly, he was the Fleet Admiral 30 years ago, right? Although Fleet Admiral Khan has a high prestige, he should be really too old. Are there no more people in the Marines who can be used? That guy, Sengoku, deserves to die. He was greedy for merit and reckless, which led to the loss of the Marines' elite in one day. It's hard to imagine that if the pirates in the New World united. Can the Marines and the world government really stop it? At the same time, in addition to cursing Sengoku, the Fleet Admiral who was pushed out by the world government to take the blame for his excessive incompetence, greed for merit, and recklessness, which led to heavy losses to the Marines and the loss of a good situation. Many people paid attention to the headlines of the World Economy News and were somewhat shocked by the title of four emperors mentioned for the first time. At the same time, they were deeply panicked and uneasy about the snowball-like growing power of the four emperors of the seas listed above, Whitebeard, Black Prison, Big Mom, and the Beast. The Netherworld pirate almost wiped out the Marines. If these four emperors of the seas put aside their prejudices and truly united, can the Marines, which has been severely damaged and is like a paper tiger, and the world government behind it withstand it? Chapter 246, Reaction. Hey, is this true? In the second half of the New World, in an unknown sea area. On the Moby Dick, which was like a moon surrounded by stars, and was guarded by several frigates in the center, it was slowly moving forward on the sea. Marco yawned and casually took the newspaper that his subordinates had just ordered from the Flying News COO, but after glancing at it, his eyes suddenly widened, and a cold sweat broke out directly on his forehead. He wiped his eyes again and again before carefully reading the newspaper word by word. Finally, he stared blankly at the young figure on the bounty list with a bounty of 5 billion belly, which was stuck in the newspaper and made people stunned. He swallowed his saliva and couldn't believe it. Pops. Marco ran directly to the bow of the ship. But he was soon surprised to find that he was not the only one who got the news. The other division captains around, as well as some members of the Whitebeard pirates, were all gathered there in groups of 3 or 5, holding a newspaper in their hands. Obviously, they were all shocked by the explosive content above. Ah, Marco, you got up late today. Whitebeard, who was sitting there, looked at Marco, who hurried over and raised the newspaper in his hand. I've seen it. TSK, the young are really formidable. With the intelligence of Whitebeard pirates scattered all over the sea, they had long received the news that the Marines were going to issue a buster call against the Netherworld pirates. They thought that if the Netherworld pirates did not evacuate decisively this time, once they were bitten by the Marines' fleet, it would be luck if they could escape. But they didn't expect that there would be such a result. 2 of the 3 admirals were lost, and 2 admiral candidates were captured. The fleet of 30,000 elite marine forces and 80 warships was completely wiped out. It was incredible. Gulala, I didn't expect that Sengoku, who had been in office for several years, would have to step down. Whitebeard was grinning there. That guy, I'm afraid he's so angry that he's about to vomit blood. Pops, it seems that you are listed as the 4 emperors along with Big Mom, the Beast, and Black Prison. 4 emperors? So boring. Whitebeard threw away the newspaper and chuckled indifferently. Then he stood up, raised his strong right arm, and announced loudly, "Little ones, let's have a banquet today and celebrate well." The Marines suffered such a big loss, and it can be said that they were seriously injured. They believe that it is impossible to withdraw troops in a short time to cause trouble in the New World again. These pirates should be happy and celebrated. As for whether the Netherworld pirates will expand and threaten the Whitebeard pirates after their rise, Whitebeard doesn't care at all. He is Whitebeard. Oh. In another part of the New World, Tado Land, Whole Cake Island, the whole town is in chaos. Boom. Caramel Puff Tower. Not this. Hand it over to me, Caramel Puff Tower. A tall figure with disheveled hair is destroying the mainland. She keeps destroying those cake buildings and even stuffs them directly into her mouth, swallowing them in big mouthfuls. Then, she spits them out. She knocks down the huge building in front of her with a punch. Her face is hideous, and her momentum is terrifying. What is shocking is that this tall and bloated figure is none other than the pirate who has just been listed as one of the 4 emperors, the captain of the Big Mom pirates, Charlotte Linglin. Is the food this time the Caramel Puff Tower? Damn it, Mom's food addiction has come back for no reason. Please wait, Mom, the chef team is working hard to make it will be ready soon. Please don't destroy the town again, Mom. Mom, this is our headquarters. Big Mom's children and the members of the Big Mom pirates were all a little panicked and sweating. They could only nervously tremble as they dissuaded Charlotte Linglin, who seemed to have lost her mind and was destroying everywhere, but no one dared to stop her. Because everyone knew that once their Big Mom's disease broke out, she would never recognize her relatives. If anyone stood in front of her, even her own children would be killed without hesitation. If they wanted her to regain her sanity, they had to make the food she wanted to eat and satisfy her requirements. They couldn't even be perfunctory, and they had to satisfy her taste before she could recover. Otherwise, she would continue to destroy. Such a big thing happened in the outside world. Looking at his mother, who was constantly destroying the town. Prospero, the eldest son of the Charlotte family, was full of distress. Mom is making a fuss at this time. What happened? A long-legged tribe beauty with long white hair and an amazing figure asked in surprise. Smoothie. Take a look for yourself. Prospero said nothing. He handed the newspaper directly to Smoothie, the 14th daughter of the Charlotte family and one of the 4 sweet commanders. Smoothie took the newspaper and glanced at it, then her eyes suddenly widened, and she took a deep breath. Hiss. Is this a joke? That Hobaskluk is so powerful? Is this real? Was the Marines' Buster Call fleet completely wiped out? 2 of the 3 admirals were killed? Even 2 admiral candidates were captured? Isn't it a bit too exaggerated? Is the Netherworld pirate so fierce? She has never heard of anyone killing an admiral since she was a child. That represents the highest combat power from the Marine headquarters and is a monster with overwhelming power. Even if it is not as good as her mother, Charlotte Linglin, a natural monster. But it is not easy to kill any admiral directly. However, Hobaskluk actually accomplished such a feat. If it weren't for Kizaru's direct escape, he would have almost killed all the 3 admirals. It's unbelievable. Our Charlotte family's intelligence has always been known as the best in the industry. I have confirmed the news, and it is real. Prospero stared at his mother, who had lost her mind and kept yelling Caramel Puff Tower, and said worriedly, "What I am worried about is that the Netherworld pirates will clash with our Big Mom pirates next. I hope it won't be that bad." When Smoothie heard this, her face became solemn. In such a short time, he was able to directly annihilate the Buster Call fleet led by 3 admirals. The Netherworld pirates are obviously a terrible enemy. But you don't have to worry too much, Brother Prospero. Our Big Mom pirates are not that weak.